Chapter 2101. Possessions from Life. Don't kill me. I'm a cultivator of the Kiruluo tribe. You will all die a horrible death. Big Brother Haiyang, quickly escape and report this matter to the ancestor. Let the ancestor avenge us. Brothers, let's stop them together. The third Ming prince took out one cultivator with each slap. In an instant, all the cultivators of the Kiruluo tribe, including Haiyang and Kiruluo, were lying on the ground lifelessly. The surrounding cultivators stared at the scene with their mouths agape. A chill ran down their spines. They only reacted when the third Ming prince glanced at them. They immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Kill them as well? The third Ming prince looked at Ning Qi. North Mystic Celestial Lord, we have nothing to do with the Kiruluo tribe. Please show us mercy and spare our lives. The cultivators of the underworld, who were sitting at the same table as Ning Qi, hurriedly spoke. Their eyes were filled with terror as they stared at Ning Qi. Ning Qi smiled and lightly tapped his finger, causing the netherworld cultivators to fall to the ground. The other netherworld cultivators thought that Ning Qi was going to kill them all, so they hastily rose from the ground and prepared to flee. However, they were quickly knocked unconscious by a gust of wind and fell heavily to the ground. At this moment, only the ice glass demon was still standing. She looked at Ning Qi with some bewilderment. Just as she was about to speak, her head flew backwards and she fell to the ground with a plop, never to rise again. These guys will be unconscious for a while. Hurry up and find the underworld crystals that Lord Kiruluo hid. Ning Qi said to the third Ming prince and Meng Tianshu. The two of them had a look of pity in their eyes. They both wanted to kill these guys. The former was bloodthirsty and the latter felt that these guys deserved to die for attending Lord Kiruluo's birthday celebration. However, since Ning Qi had no intention of killing them, they could not oppose his decision. With the help of the third Ming prince, it only took the two of them less than 10 minutes to find King Kiruluo's treasure vault. There were more than 2 million dark crystals in there, as well as other rare treasures. However, the most valuable item was a jade tablet that King Kiruluo had left on the ground after his death. The function of this jade tablet was similar to that of an interspatial ring. It was a completely different world. After the death of Kiruluo King, the jade tablet immediately fell into Ning Qi's hands. While the two of them were searching for the treasury, Ning Qi had already gone through the contents of the jade tablet. Instead of nether crystals, there were various kinds of materials. There was a beating heart, and there was a piece of exotic iron that exuded thick nether qi. Judging from how much Kiruluo King valued these materials, it was obvious that they were extremely valuable. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, everything is inside. Meng Tianshu respectfully handed an interspatial ring to Ning Qi. Ning Qi noticed that this interspatial ring belonged to Meng Tianshu himself. You gave me your things too? Ning Qi asked with a faint smile. Meng Tianshu was a little surprised. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, you helped me take revenge today. I really can't think of a way to repay you, so I can only express my gratitude. Although the things inside are not very valuable to you, I have worked hard to collect them. They should be of use to your disciple. Forget it. You lead the way, and I will help you take revenge. This is a deal in itself. You can keep the ring. Anyway, these dark crystals are useless to me. Ning Qi smiled and threw the ring back to Meng Tianshu. He had the divine skills of the Immortal Clan and the cultivation method of the Demon Clan, so he had no intention of using the cultivation method of the Nether Clan. These dark crystals were naturally useless to him. As long as it was enough to bribe the registrar of the Azura clan to find Wang Shui's whereabouts, it would be enough. Meng Tianshu was still hesitating, but Ning Qi had already grabbed him and flew away. Seeing this, the third Ming prince curled his lips helplessly and followed. Samsara City. I have already sent the dark crystals to the registrar. As for when he will ask you to come to the Samsara temple, you can go back and wait for the news. A young cultivator of the underworld glanced at Meng Tianshu arrogantly, then looked at Ning Qi and the third Ming prince with a strange look in his eyes. He then waved his hand impatiently and turned around to enter the side door of the Samsara temple. Meng Tianshu, is that guy reliable? Don't just take the dark crystals and do nothing. The third Ming prince sneered. Meng Tianshu wasn't confident either, but fortunately, they only sent 100,000 nether crystals. Even if the registrar from the Azura clan wasn't reliable, they could still bribe the other registrars. Their purpose was just to find out the whereabouts of an unimportant soul. For those registrars, such a trivial matter was as easy as lifting a finger. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, let's go back and wait for the news. Meng Tianshu said. All right. Ning Qi glanced at the Samsara temple and suppressed the urge to rush in. He turned around and left. About 3 days later, the young cultivator from the underworld found Ning Qi and the other two and led them into the Samsara temple through the side door. After passing through countless complicated corridors, they finally arrived in front of an extremely magnificent hall. The registrar, Chan Feng, is on duty today. He is inside. Go in, but be careful when you go in. If there are others around, don't tell them the purpose of your visit. The young cultivator from the underworld warned Ning Qi and the other two before he turned around and left. Meng Tianshu and the third Ming prince looked at Ning Qi simultaneously. Ning Qi looked up and down the hall, then finally walked into the hall. Is this the key to the Samsara temple? As soon as he entered the hall, Ning Qi saw beams of blue light falling from the sky above the hall. There were countless faces in the blue light beams, constantly changing their expressions. Some were angry, some were confused, some were sad, some were excited, and some were resentful. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, these are the souls that our underworld cultivators have captured from all over the world. Meng Tianshu transmitted his voice. Where will they be sent to? Ning Qi's eyes flickered. Meng Tianshu was startled, then he let out a wry smile. I don't know. I'm afraid even the current Emperor Hades doesn't know the secret. I only know that this temple has existed for a very long time, but I don't know exactly how long it has existed. So, you are looking for the whereabouts of a soul? An old voice came from the shadows in the depths of the temple. That's right. Ning Qi cupped his hands. Do you have anything from when he was alive? The voice got closer and closer. Not long after, an old man with white hair that almost reached the ground slowly walked in front of the three and looked at Ning Qi. This was the Chan Feng Azura that Meng Tianshu bribed, one of the 9 registrars of the Samsara temple and a late-stage Nether Realm expert. Chapter 2102. Qing Sky Shuangluo Official Chan Feng, who are they? There were a total of 7 netherworld cultivators who had suddenly entered the Divine Hall. 6 of them seemed like servants and had respectful expressions. The leader had black hair that fell to his shoulders like a waterfall. His eyes flickered with cold light as he stared at Ning Qi's group of 3. His expression was rather ugly. Qing Sky Shuangluo, who they are is none of your business. What are you doing here? The Zen Wind Azura looked at the other party indifferently with a cold glint in his eyes. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, Qing Sky Shuangluo is one of the 2 Nether Realm experts of the Shuangluo clan. He is the Hall Master of the Samsara Temple's Law Enforcement Hall. I'm afraid he has come with ill intentions. Meng Tianshu transmitted his voice to Ning Qi. Ning Qi smiled and looked at Qing Sky Shuangluo. If he wanted to interfere, he wouldn't mind sending him on his way. I have received news that some unrelated people have entered the Divine Temple. This is an important place in the underworld. Ming Di has given me the position of Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. I have to pay attention to this place. Official Chan Feng, may I know what they are here for? Qing Sky Shuangluo looked at Zen Wind Azura with a faint smile. He was well aware that the 9 registrars occasionally accepted bribes to investigate the records of souls in the Samsara temple. It had become a rule. As long as they did not cross the line, he would turn a blind eye to it. However, he had fallen out with Zen Wind Azura because of a dark artifact. Today, he had received news that someone had entered the divine temple and that the greedy Zen Wind Azura was on duty. Qing Sky Xuangluo immediately knew what had happened. He rushed to the divine temple with his subordinates and stopped Ning Qi and his companions. As long as he could catch the Zen Wind Shura, he would either have to hand over the dark artifact to him, or he would have to report this matter to Emperor Ming. Even if the Zen Wind Shura was also from the Shura clan like Emperor Ming would not be able to protect him. Qing Sky Xuangluo, you are too impatient. Do you really think that I don't know that you are waiting for me? Zen Wind Azura suddenly laughed with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Qing Tian Xuanluo was slightly taken aback. Then, he suddenly realized that Ning Qi and the other 2 hadn't started checking the records of the souls yet. Qing Kong Xuanluo's expression became rather ugly when he thought of this. Zen Wind Azura laughed out loud. Then, he waved his hand at Ning Qi and the other 2. You can go back. Although you tried to bribe me this time, I will forgive you since this is your first time making a mistake. They can't go. Qing Kong Xuanluo shouted coldly, and his 6 subordinates immediately stepped forward, surrounding Ning Qi and the other 2. Zen Wind Azura, you must have been bribed by them to help them look into the records of their souls, am I right? Qing Sky Xuanluo looked at Zen Wind Azura and shouted angrily. You've misunderstood me. Why would I accept bribes? The 3 of them did indeed come here to inquire about the records of souls coming and going. However, they said that this old man accepted bribes. Which eye of yours saw it? Zen Wind Azura looked at Qing Kong Xuanluo with a faint smile. Meng Tianshu finally understood that the 3 of them had been tricked by Qing Kong Xuanluo. It was no wonder that they had waited a few days before coming to the Samsara temple. It was to lure Qing Kong Xuanluo into taking the bait. The 3 of them had been implicated in the conflict between Qing Kong Xuanluo and Zen Wind Azura. You can hide from me once, but let's see if you can hide again. Qing Kong Xuanluo's eyes flashed with a hint of unwillingness. Then, he sneered at Ning Qi and the other 2 and shouted, Take these 3 away. They have entered the Samsara temple without permission. They deserve death. Take care. I won't see you out. Zen Wind Azura smiled and waved his hand. He did not even look at Ning Qi and the other 2. It was as if he had not taken their 100,000 nether crystals. Seeing that Qing Kong Xuanluo's subordinates were about to suppress the 3 of them, Ning Qi smiled and looked at Zen Wind Azura. Official Chan Wind, you took my 100,000 nether crystals. Not only did you not do anything, but you also intend to sell us out? Can you be reasonable? What nonsense are you talking about? Reason? What reason do I have to reason with ants like you? Zen Wind Azura glanced at Ning Qi coldly, then turned to Qing Kong Xuanluo and said mockingly, What are you waiting for? Take these 3 intruders away. Oh, so you're not going to reason then? Ning Qi smiled. Qing Kong Xuanluo and Zen Wind Azura suddenly found Ning Qi's behavior strange. If a normal underworld cultivator knew that he was going to be taken away by the hall master of the Samsara Temple's law enforcement hall, he would have been scared out of his wits. Why was Ning Qi so calm? Just when the 2 of them were curious, Ning Qi threw out 6 punches. Puff, puff, puff. 6 of Qing Kong Xuanluo's subordinates suddenly exploded into a mist of blood. The Samsara Temple was immediately filled with the faint smell of blood. How dare you? Qing Kong Xuanluo was taken aback, but he quickly reacted. He shouted and tried to suppress Ning Qi, but before his attack could land, Ning Qi's fist had already landed on his stomach. Qing Kong Xuanluo was a late-stage Nether Realm expert, but after being hit by Ning Qi's punch, his internal organs were all smashed into pieces. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his aura weakened at a rapid rate. Before long, Qin Kong Xuanluo's aura was no different from that of an ordinary person. In fact, he was much weaker than an ordinary person. No, Qin Kong Xuanluo was extremely weak, and his eyes were filled with shock. When he realized that his cultivation had been destroyed, the shock gradually faded and was replaced by despair, endless despair. Meng Tianshu's lips curled into a cold smile. He looked at Qin Kong Xuanluo mockingly, then at Zhen Wen de Jura, who seemed to have been petrified. He knew that Ning Qi did not intend to kill anyone in the Samsara temple, but the two of them did not know what was good for them to do. How is this possible? Qin Kong Xuanluo's cultivation is almost the same as mine, but he was destroyed with a single punch? Who is this person? How can he have such terrifying strength? Is he at the full nether realm? Impossible. How can there be a second full nether realm expert other than Ming Di? Zhen Wen de Jura looked at Ning Qi in disbelief, and his eyes were filled with shock. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He had a terrifying guess. "Senior, are you from the upper world?" Zhen Wen de Jura stammered as he suppressed the fear in his heart. "This is her hair when she was alive. Help me find her whereabouts, and I will spare your life today." Ning Qi smiled and handed Wang Shui's hair to Zhen Wen de Jura. Chapter 2103. Chapter 2103. Chapter 2103 Falling. After Zhen Wen de Jura formed the hand seals, the faces inside the blue pillar of light changed at a much faster speed. Even Meng Tianshu couldn't see them with his naked eyes. However, Ning Qi and the third Ming prince could see them clearly. Time passed by slowly. Qin Kong Qianluo stared at Ning Qi with fear in his eyes. He didn't dare to run or act recklessly now that he had lost his cultivation. He didn't want to be killed by Ning Qi's palm strike. However, Qin Kong Qianluo was still thinking about how to inform Emperor Ming about this. This was the only way he could survive. "How long does it take for the shift here?" Ning Qi looked at Meng Tianshu. 10 days had passed, but the Zhen Wen de Jura had yet to find anything. A layer of cold sweat had appeared on his face, and Ning Qi's expression had gradually become a little unsightly. 1 year. Meng Tianshu said in a low voice. Ning Qi nodded and looked at Zhen Wen de Jura. If he could not find anything in a year, he would not mind suppressing the guy who came to take over his shift. After all, Ning Qi would not leave the Samsara temple until he found something. The Samsara temple had captured too many souls. A year had passed and Zhen Wen de Jura still had not found Wang Shui's soul. One day, another registrar who was on duty walked into the shrine. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was a little stunned. He understood what the Zhen Wen de Jura was doing. After all, he had done it many times in the past. However, as the hall master of the law enforcement hall, Qing Sky Xuanluo, why would he lie on the ground and watch the Zhen Wen de Jura violate the rules in front of him? Before he could figure it out, the third Ming prince appeared in front of him and said with a smile, "Shoo!" The next moment, with a loud bang, the cultivation of the registrar, who was also a late-stage nether realm expert, was destroyed. The third Ming prince threw him beside Qin Kong Xuanluo as if he was a piece of trash. He was still in a daze. How could he encounter such danger in the Samsara temple? Zhen Wen de Jura saw this from the corner of his eyes, and his body was covered in cold sweat. He quickly gathered double his energy to help Ning Qi locate Wang Shui's soul. In the 3rd year, another registrar came on duty. He was more cautious and sensed something was wrong at the door. When he tried to escape, he was caught by 3rd Prince Ming and his cultivation was destroyed. The 4th year, the 5th year. With the exception of Zhen Wen de Jura, all the other registrars of the Samsara temple were crippled by the 3rd Prince Ming. Zhen Wen de Jura had fallen into a state of deep fear. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead and dripped onto the ground. Suddenly, the Zhen Wen de Jura's eyes lit up with joy. A face appeared in the blue pillar of light. I found him, I found him. Senior, is this the person you're looking for? The Zen Wind Azura turned around to look at Ning Qi, only to discover that Ning Qi was already standing beside him. Schwerv. Ning Qi stared blankly at the pillar of light. The face inside was Wang Shui, whom he hadn't seen for many years. This appearance seemed to be left behind when Wang Shui's soul was taken away by the underworld cultivator for the first time. There was a trace of panic on her face, and there seemed to be a trace of nostalgia for the world in her eyes. Where is she now? Ning Qi asked calmly. The Zen Wind Azura was horrified. After entering the Samsara temple, one's soul was basically sent to a place that even he didn't know. If he couldn't tell him where Wang Shui was today, the Zen Wind Azura felt that he would suffer a fate worse than Qin Kong Qianluo and the others. Just as the Zen Wind Azura was at a loss for words, he suddenly noticed an imperceptible trace. Then, the Zen Wind Azura's face lit up with joy. He said to Ning Qi, Senior, the underworld cultivator who captured this soul was greedy and used a secret skill to detain her. She hasn't been sent away by the Samsara temple, so she should still be in the underworld. Many underworld cultivators would not bring out all the souls they had captured when they went out to collect souls. Occasionally they would detain 1 or 2 souls, but as long as they did so, they would leave behind a trace or 2. For example, there was a crack below Wang Shui's face. Normally, even registrars like them would find it difficult to notice such a tiny difference. After all, there were too many souls that came to the Samsara temple every day. That was why some underworld cultivators dared to hide it from the public. A cold light flashed in Ning Qi's eyes as the giant arm appeared in his mind. When he used the elixir to summon Wang Shui's soul back to the central mainland, it was the owner of the arm who had captured Wang Shui's soul. At that time, Ning Qi had thought that the owner of the arm was a 9 tribulations creator, but now it seemed that the owner of the arm was at least in the early nether realm. Who is that underworld cultivator? Ning Qi looked at the Zen Wind Azura calmly. The Zen Wind Azura jumped in fright and quickly formed a seal with his hands. Before long, a face appeared in the pillar of light. This person was middle-aged and had a cold expression. Just from the aura in front of him, his cultivation shouldn't be too high. At most, he was at the early nether realm or middle nether realm. Meng Tianshu walked up to the light pillar and looked at it carefully. Then, he shook his head at Ning Qi, indicating that he did not recognize this person. Do you know him? Ning Qi looked at the Zen Wind Azura. The Zen Wind Azura recalled carefully and said in a low voice, Senior, I have no impression of this person. I'm afraid he is only in the early nether realm. Ning Qi's eyes turned cold. There was only a face and no other clues. Trying to find a person in the underworld with such little clues was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. As senior, I think I know who this person is. A voice suddenly came from behind. Everyone looked over and saw a registrar whose cultivation had been destroyed by the third prince. He looked at Ning Qi with a fawning expression and said, Senior, I've seen this person once. Ning Qi said lightly, I only hope that Senior can spare my life. The other party hesitated for a moment before saying, All right. Ning Qi nodded. Speak. This person should be the disciple of an old friend of mine. During that old friend's birthday, I went to congratulate him and saw him once, the other party said in a low voice. Then, his lips moved slightly, and he told Ning Qi everything he knew about this person. Bring him along. Ning Qi nodded and walked out of the temple. Seeing this, the third prince grabbed the registrar and followed. The Zen Wind Azura let out a sigh of relief. This time, his life was saved. Chapter 2104. The Old Demon of the Black Mountain. Should we report this to Emperor Hades? Zen Wind Azura, who are those 3 people? Now that Qinkong Xuanluo is dead, I'm afraid the Xuanluo clan will cause a huge ruckus and cripple our cultivation. If we don't kill him, we will never be able to appease our hatred. After making sure that Ning Qi and the others had left, the remaining registrars started discussing among themselves. In the end, they all looked at Zhen Wen de Jura. He was the only one whose cultivation had not been crippled by Ning Qi. Regardless of whether they were jealous or unwilling, they all hoped that Zhen Wen de Jura would give them an explanation. Zhen Wen de Jura looked at them indifferently. This person is most likely from the upper world. We will definitely report this to Emperor Hades. However, don't get your hopes up about how Emperor Hades will deal with this matter. What? Upper world? Everyone looked at each other in horror. When they thought of the third Prince Ming's methods and his respectful attitude towards Ning Qi, their hearts were in turmoil. If Ning Qi was truly from the upper world, then even Emperor Hades would not be able to avenge them. Everyone is severely injured. I'll send a message to you. Zhen Wen de Jura's eyes flashed with joy. He was truly lucky to be able to preserve his cultivation today. Samsara City, Emperor Hades Hall. A tall figure sat on the main seat. Several late-stage Nether Realm cultivators stood beside him. At this moment, these cultivators, including the tall figure, were all looking at the 7 people in front of them. Among the 7 of them, 6 of them were cripples who had lost all of their cultivation. Only the Zhen Wen de Jura had no visible injuries on his body. You said that this person is from the upper world. Do you have any proof? Emperor Hades asked calmly. His aura was no weaker than the third Prince Ming's. He was the only perfected Nether Realm cultivator in the first heaven of the underworld. His cultivation is extremely powerful. Even his subordinates could cripple the cultivation of all the registrars with a single move. Therefore, I believe that this person is from the upper world, Zhen Wen de Jura said respectfully. He wasn't afraid of Ming Di. After all, Ming Di was also from the Shura clan and was a direct ancestor of his bloodline. Ming Di glanced at the Zhen Wen de Jura and fell silent for a moment. He suddenly took out a bronze mirror and drew a few lines on it. A voice that seemed to come from the depths of the abyss came from the mirror. Ninely Azura, what business do you have with me? The expressions of Zhen Wen de Jura and the others immediately became extremely respectful. They lowered their bodies even more. They knew that the being inside the copper mirror was a cultivator from the upper realm. Emissary, I would like to ask if there were any cultivators from the upper realm who came to the first heaven during this period of time? Emperor Hades said respectfully. Never. Never. What happened to your first heaven? It's like this. After Ming Di explained the situation, the copper mirror immediately fell silent. After a long while, the owner of the voice spoke again. I've already looked into it. No cultivators have gone to the first heaven during this period of time. The existences you've met are either people who have been cultivating in seclusion for many years and you don't even know about them, or they aren't cultivators from the underworld. You must investigate this matter personally and confirm their identity. If they aren't cultivators from the underworld, report to me immediately. Not cultivators from the underworld? Emperor Hades was stunned. The Zhen Wen de Jura and the others were stunned as well. Then, the Zhen Wen de Jura's expression suddenly changed. He felt that there was a high chance that his guess was correct. Emperor Hades put down the copper mirror with a solemn expression. Where is he? Reincarnation Zone. This was a place that was many times more prosperous than the revolving sea region. The ruler of this place was also a late-stage Nether Realm cultivator. He was known as the Black Mountain Demon. No one knew which clan he came from, but according to the registrar, he was much stronger than an ordinary late-stage Nether Realm cultivator. Otherwise, with the registrar's background, there was no way he would have come to congratulate him on his birthday. This was a cultivator who had a high chance of breaking through to the perfect Nether Realm. Many cultivators of the underworld secretly believed that he could become the next Emperor Hades. He might even break through the shackles of his cultivation and ascend to the second heaven of the underworld. It's the Black Mountain Demon. Meng Tianshu's face was filled with shock. Is this person very scary? Ning Qi smiled. Not only is he scary. Among the 8 clans, other than the Azura clan, the other 7 clans combined might not be his match. Meng Tianshu said solemnly. The registrar didn't refute Meng Tianshu's words because Meng Tianshu was right. If Emperor Hades didn't take action, the other clan's late-stage Netherrealm cultivators might not be a match for the Black Mountain Demon even if they joined hands. That was why the entire reincarnation zone was under the control of the Black Mountain Demon, and no other forces dared to step into it. No matter how strong he is still a mere late-stage Netherrealm cultivator. The third prince sneered. A mere late-stage Netherrealm cultivator? The registrar's eyes flashed with horror. He was finally sure that the cultivation of these 2 people must be above the late-stage Netherrealm. Let's go. Since you know the Black Mountain Demon, let's visit him directly. Ning Qi said lightly. The Black Mountain Demon's cave residence was on the Rootless Island in the center of the reincarnation zone. This island was suspended in the air, and below it was a huge city. The underworld cultivators walking in this city were generally 1 or 2 levels stronger than those of the revolving sea region. Who are you? When they were about to fly to the Rootless Island, several figures broke through the air and stopped Ning Qi and the others. These people were all mid-stage Netherrealm cultivators, the same as King Wan Luo. In the first heaven of the underworld, they could be regarded as masters who could suppress a region. But now, it seemed that they were guarding the door of the Black Mountain Demon, which showed how powerful the Black Mountain Demon was in the reincarnation zone. I am Pu Yen Inshan. I would like to see the Black Mountain Demon. The registrar in the third prince's hand hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Pu Yen Inshan? One of the ancestors of the Inshan clan? The other party looked at Pu Yen Inshan strangely. This guy's aura was like that of an ant. Was he really a late-stage Netherrealm master? At this time, the third prince suddenly exuded a faint aura, which made the expressions of the other party change. They looked at the third prince with some fear, and then nodded and said, Please wait here for a moment. I will go and send the message. They turned around and left. Ning Qi and the others didn't wait for long. About 15 minutes later, they broke through the air again and said to Ning Qi and the others, My lord wants to see you. Please follow me. Chapter 2105. Chapter 2105. Chapter 2105. Fellow cultivators, huh? Isn't that the ancestor of the Inshan family, Pu Yen Inshan? That's right. I remember he came once during the ancestor's 30,000th birthday. But his aura seems a bit off. He seems to be heavily injured? Who are those people with him? Logically speaking, they should be late-stage Netherrealm experts if they're with Senior Pu Yen. I don't think I've seen them before. Looks like they're going to see the ancestor. Curious eyes fell on Ning Qi and the others. As they approached the hall where the old monster of Black Mountain was, the underworld cultivators on the road became more and more powerful. There were more than 10 people at the middle stage of the Netherrealm, which was more than the Luo family. The Lord is inside. Please come in. The mid-stage Netherrealm cultivator who was leading the way stopped at the entrance of the hall and smiled. Pu Yen Inshan looked at Ning Qi with a questioning look in his eyes. Seeing Ning Qi nod slightly, he stepped in first. As they entered the hall, 4 pairs of eyes fell on them. A tall and straight underworld cultivator sat on the main seat. He had a buzz cut and his hair was snow-white. His hands were hidden in his wide sleeves, and there was a faint smile on his face. Beside him sat 3 other cultivators. Each of them had an aura no weaker than the late-stage Netherrealm cultivators. However, they were weaker than Pu Yen Inshan before he was crippled by the third prince. Is that really Pu Yen Inshan? But his cultivation seems to have been crippled? The three late-stage Nether Realm cultivators looked at each other with a strange expression. Finally, their gazes fell on the third prince. Compared to the third prince, Ning Qi's aura was more obscure. Since he hadn't broken through the shackles of the Nine Tribulations creator, he didn't attract much attention. In the eyes of the three, the third prince was more like the leader of this trip. "Brother Puyen, long time no see. You seem to be injured?" The cultivator with short white hair smiled and said. He was the master of the reincarnation field, the Black Mountain Demon. Puyen Yinshan's expression was somewhat ugly. He forced a smile and said, "I indeed suffered some injuries. However, I'm already very satisfied to be able to preserve my life." As he spoke, he looked at Ning Qi in an ingratiating manner. When the other three cultivators heard this, they were shocked. This was not in line with Puyen Yinshan's character. They had all met Puyen Yinshan before because he was one of the two patriarchs of the Yinshan clan and one of the 9 registrars of the Samsara temple. He was qualified to meet Ming Di. He was usually arrogant and would only humble himself in front of the old demon of the Black Mountain. But now, Puyen Yinshan was trying to please someone. Their gazes swept past the third prince and landed on Ning Qi, and their eyes revealed a trace of bewilderment. The three of them were sure that Puyen was looking at Ning Qi and not the third prince. Some injuries? Even their cultivation was destroyed. This is not a small injury. "Brother Puyen, may I know who these people are?" The Witch of the Black Mountain smiled slightly and looked at Ning Qi. He nodded in a friendly manner. There was no trace of hostility in his body, which was extremely inconsistent with his title. "I am Ning Beixian." Ning Qi smiled. Except for his name, Ning Qi did not introduce himself. The three cultivators at the late stage of the Nether Realm looked at each other, and the look in their eyes became more and more serious. The third prince and Meng Tianshu did not speak. The former was too lazy to say anything, and the latter knew that he was not even qualified to introduce himself on this occasion. The Witch of the Black Mountain was only asking about Ning Qi. "So it's Brother Beixian. May I know the reason for your visit today?" The Witch of the Black Mountain smiled. Puyen Yinshan was seriously injured and his cultivation was destroyed, but he still brought these people here. Obviously, they did not come here to relax, but for a very important purpose. Ning Qi took a deep look at the Witch of the Black Mountain. From the moment he entered this hall, he found that the Witch of the Black Mountain was not a simple cultivator from the Nether Realm. Because he could not see his attribute. The system had been updated for so many times, and his cultivation had been greatly enhanced. It had been a long time since he could not see his attribute. He could even see the attributes of a cultivator at the Earth Devil stage. Ning Qi did not know that the Witch of the Black Mountain was as shocked as he was. "This person should be your disciple, right?" Ning Qi waved his hand, and the immortal Qi condensed into a face. The Witch of the Black Mountain gradually frowned. Seeing this, Puyen Yinshan suddenly felt a little nervous, and his palms were full of cold sweat. In fact, he was not 100% sure whether he had seen this guy in the Witch of the Black Mountain or not. But when he saw this face in the Samsara temple, he felt that it was very familiar. After using various methods, he was 70% to 80% sure that he had seen this guy in the Witch of the Black Mountain. As for whether he was the disciple of the Witch of the Black Mountain, Puyen Yinshan was actually not 100% sure. "This person is not my disciple." After a while, the Witch of the Black Mountain shook his head calmly. Puyen Yinshan's heart skipped a beat, and he said subconsciously, "Brother Black Mountain, on the day of your birthday, I did see this person here, and his seat was quite close to yours. If he is, then he is. I, the Witch of the Black Mountain, never lie, and I disdain to lie. Although this person is not my disciple, I know his background." The Witch of the Black Mountain smiled slightly. His voice was very light, but it gave people a sense of decisiveness. "This." Puyen Yinshan looked at Ning Qi in horror. After this small detail was noticed by the other 3 cultivators, they became more and more surprised. Why was Pu Yen Yinshan so afraid of this person? Who was this person? Ning Beixian. I have never heard of this name. He should not be from the 8 clans. Ning Qi did not look at Pu Yen Yinshan, but at the Witch of the Black Mountain. Brother Black Mountain, what is his name and where is he? The Witch of the Black Mountain smiled, and glanced at the 3rd prince and the others. Suddenly, he stood up and said, Brother Beixian, please follow me. Ning Qi's eyes flickered slightly, and he followed the Witch of the Black Mountain. The 3rd prince also wanted to follow, but Ning Qi stopped him with a look. Seeing this, the 3 cultivators of the underworld looked at each other, and a trace of doubt arose in their hearts. The Witch of the Black Mountain seemed to have something that he did not want them to know, and he wanted to tell Ning Beixian alone. Could it be that there was some secret in that face? Thinking of this, the 3 of them looked at the 3rd prince and Pu Yen Yinshan, but the 3rd prince had no intention of paying attention to them. He found a seat, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes to take a nap. Brother Beixian, you and I are the same. Chapter 2106. Chapter 2106 of the D.A.D. But today, you are just an ant. Fellow cultivator? Brother Black Mountain, what do you mean? Ning Qi's eyes flickered slightly, and he said lightly. The Black Mountain old demon smiled. Since I began to cultivate, there has never been anyone that I couldn't see through. Even if they were envoys from the immortal world, I could see through them. But only you, I can't see through you, which means that you and I have the same thing. Speaking of this, a round shield that seemed to be made of black iron suddenly appeared between the eyebrows of the Black Mountain old demon. When this shield appeared, Ning Qi seemed to feel it, and a character gradually appeared between his eyebrows. At the same time, another character also appeared on the shield of the Black Mountain old demon. Sure enough, the joy in the eyes of the Black Mountain old demon was even more intense. When Ning Qi saw this character, a trace of shock flashed in his eyes, and then he looked at the Black Mountain old demon with a strange expression. That character was very simple, but in its simplicity, there was a trace of ancient simplicity, as if it was the character of the Great Way, Jiang. This simple character let Ning Qi know that the identity of the Black Mountain old demon was indeed very similar to his, or in other words, they were both chosen people. Ning Qi's expression gradually became serious. If the other party was really a fellow cultivator, and his cultivation had reached the late stage of the Nether Realm, perhaps his real combat power was countless times stronger than what he seemed on the surface, just like Ning Qi himself. Brother Beixian, you don't have to regard me as an enemy. I have said that you and I are fellow cultivators. For so many years, I have been to countless places and countless worlds, and I have been searching for the truth. Do you know what this character above our heads represents? The corners of the Black Mountain old demon's mouth rose slightly. What does it represent? Ning Qi said lightly. An extremely huge and terrifying force. We are all the outer sect disciples of this force, which means that in the sect, we are not strong enough and have no aptitude, so we are just outer sect disciples with empty titles. The Black Mountain old demon smiled and said, So, you and I are fellow disciples of the same sect. Brother Black Mountain, why do you think such a huge force suddenly chose us? What do you think their purpose is? Is it really as simple as selecting disciples? There was a hint of sarcasm in Ning Qi's eyes. If I were to use this method to recruit disciples, I would definitely have extremely dangerous tasks for them to do. During the process, everything would be a test. The Witch of the Black Mountain smiled. Perhaps it's a dead end. Ning Qi said lightly. That's right, your thoughts are the same as mine. However, after seeing you today, another guess in my heart has been verified. In this world, there are probably millions of existences like you and me. However, after so many years, I've only met you. This is entirely because this world is too vast. I'm afraid that the ones they choose are the ones who have the ability to stand before them. Brother Beixian, what do you think? There was a hint of fighting intent in the eyes of the Witch of Black Mountain. Ning Qi thought of the disciple of the Jiang family mentioned by Feng Jiuxian. Perhaps this person was also like him and the old demon of Black Mountain in front of him, but one of the thousands of people, except that he was at the forefront? Looks like Brother Beixian agrees with me. I'm no longer alone in this world. The Witch of Black Mountain couldn't help but laugh out loud. After hearing this laughter, the cultivators on the rootless island were all shocked. What on earth could make their old ancestors so happy? Ning Qi looked at the Witch of Black Mountain with a strange expression. The state of the Witch of Black Mountain reminded him of a movie he had seen on Earth. When all human beings perished, the protagonist lived alone in this world. One day, he saw another human being. Brother Beixian, I'm too happy today. Don't take it to heart. The person you're looking for is called Heng Yu. He has just broken through to the late stage of the Nether Realm some time ago. He is a hermit cultivator and spends most of his time in closed-door cultivation. Before I achieved the Tao, he was already at the middle stage of the Nether Realm. The Witch of Black Mountain smiled. Brother Black Mountain, where is this person now? A sharp light flashed in Ning Qi's eyes. Seeing this, the Witch of Black Mountain suddenly understood and said, "This person is in the reincarnation domain. I'll take you to him." Somewhere in a desolate mountain range, there was a poisonous fog all day long. Within a radius of tens of thousands of miles, even the cultivators of the underworld rarely appeared. Occasionally, an underworld cultivator would appear, but they would hurriedly bypass this mountain range. They knew that there was a terrifying existence cultivating in the mountain range. On this day, two figures appeared in the sky, standing in the sky above the mountain range. Not long after, a cultivator covered in a black robe flew out of the mountain range. This cultivator's exposed arms were covered with black hair. Seeing this scene, Ning Qi's eyes gradually became serious. Brother Black Mountain? The cultivator in the black robe seemed a little surprised, and his voice was a little hoarse. Heng Yu, I haven't seen you for many years. Your cultivation has improved again. The Witch of Black Mountain smiled slightly. The cultivator in the black robe glanced at Ning Qi, then looked at the Witch of Black Mountain and said, Brother Black Mountain, are you passing by here or are you looking for me? Of course I'm looking for you. Heng Yu, I want to ask you for something. I wonder if you can give it to me? The Witch of Black Mountain smiled. After a moment of silence, the cultivator in the black robe smiled and said, What do you want, Brother Black Mountain? As long as I have it, you can take it. A soul. Ning Qi said slowly, a soul that you have taken from the central mainland. Who are you? The cultivator in the black robe suddenly looked at Ning Qi. His eyes that were hidden in the black robe seemed to flash with a trace of surprise. He vaguely felt that the person in front of him was very familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. Who am I? Don't you remember? Then you should remember her, right? There was a faint trace of mockery in Ning Qi's eyes. With a wave of his hand, the immortal Qi suddenly condensed into the appearance of Wang Shui, which was vivid and lifelike. It's her? The cultivator in the black robe exclaimed, then looked at Ning Qi in shock. You are that ant, the ant who wanted to take away my soul. Impossible, how could you come to the underworld? And I was indeed an ant to you back then, but today. The corners of Ning Qi's mouth curled up slightly. He moved and appeared in front of the cultivator in the black robe. He grabbed the cultivator's neck tightly, and the joints of his palms made cracking sounds. But today you are the ant. Chapter 2107. Chapter 2107. Chapter 2107. Another disciple of the Jiang family, tell me, where is Shui-Er's soul? Ning Qi's face was cold. He exerted more strength in his palm and shouted coldly. Why is the Witch of the Black Mountain with him? How could his strength become so terrifying? The black-robed cultivator's face gradually showed a trace of horror. If the Witch of the Black Mountain was not here, he might try to fight with Ningqi. However, he knew the strength of the Witch of the Black Mountain. If the Witch of the Black Mountain was here today, he could not win in any case. You let go of me, I will tell you where her soul is. The black-robed cultivator struggled and said. Hearing this, Ningqi gradually withdrew the strength of his palm, but he still held the man's neck and did not intend to let go. Just say it like that, Ningqi said lightly. At the same time, his divine thoughts also found a cave mansion buried deep under the mountain. There seemed to be a cauldron in the cave mansion, and the cauldron was filled with thousands of souls, who were screaming miserably. After seeing all this, Ningqi's divine thoughts frantically searched for Wang Shui, but there was no trace of Wang Shui's soul. Ningqi's heart gradually sank. That soul is not in my hands. The black-robed cultivator hesitated and said. The Witch of the Black Mountain's expression changed slightly, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Ningqi suddenly exerted more strength in his palm and almost tore the man's neck. Did you refine her soul? Don't get me wrong. I didn't refine her soul. Seeing that Ningqi was about to go berserk, the black-robed cultivator did not dare to keep Ningqi in suspense for the sake of his life. There is a strange mark on that soul. I kept her because of this mark and wanted to study her. But not long after, someone came to ask me for her, so I gave her soul to that person. A strange mark? Someone came to ask for her? Ningqi felt that the black-robed cultivator was making up a story to save his life. If he did not want to ask clearly, he would have been beaten into minced meat by Ningqi. What a joke! Heng Yu, I know your character. If someone asks you for something, you will give it to him? The Witch of Black Mountain sneered. Brother Black Mountain, and this brother, everything I've said today is not a lie. I didn't want to give it to you, but the other party's cultivation is too terrifying. It's very likely that he's an envoy from the upper realm. If I don't give it to you, I won't be able to keep my life. The black-robed cultivator smiled bitterly. With that, he tore off the black robe on his head. Ningqi and the Witch of the Black Mountain immediately saw a long scar on his face. This scar seemed to run through his whole face. It was very likely that his head had been cut in half not long ago. Ningqi still didn't believe what this person said. Wang Shui was just an ordinary girl. How could there be an imprint on her soul? How could someone rush in front of him and take away Wang Shui's soul? Since you said she was taken away by someone, then who was it? Ningqi said lightly. I don't know. As soon as the black-robed cultivator said this, Ningqi's fist had already fallen on his stomach. In an instant, the majestic immortal qi and devil qi merged together and crazily poured into the black-robed cultivator's body, destroying his meridians, his body, and his vitality. Wait, I only know that he claims to be a disciple of the Jiang family, but I really don't know his real name. I'm telling the truth. The black-robed cultivator's face was full of horror. In an instant, he felt that his cultivation, which had just broken through to the late stage of the nether realm, had almost fallen back to the middle stage of the nether realm. A disciple of the Jiang family again? Ningqi was slightly stunned, and then his eyes suddenly burst with anger. He had already believed what the black-robed cultivator said. This was definitely not a coincidence. With the black-robed cultivator's ability, if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, it was impossible for him to know the existence of a disciple of the Jiang family. But why did the disciple of the Jiang family take away Wang Shui's soul? Where did he take Wang Shui now? The continent of the immortal tribe? Brother Beixian, the disciple of the Jiang family that Heng Yu mentioned, could it be the old Witch of Black Mountain's expression also became extremely solemn. The black-robed cultivator suddenly realized that the two people in front of him seemed to know who the young cultivator who claimed to be a disciple of the Jiang family was. However, after Wang Shui's soul was taken away, he also spent a lot of effort to inquire about it, but he couldn't find any clues. It was as if there had never been such a person in the first heaven of the underworld. Because of this, he thought that the other party was an envoy from the upper world. Yes, the F***king disciple of the Jiang family. Ning Qi nodded coldly. You too, I think you know who the disciple of the Jiang family is. Now do you believe what I said? That girl's soul was indeed in my hands before, but then it was taken away by the disciple of the Jiang family. As for where he took it, I really don't know. Today's matter should be a misunderstanding. Why don't we? The black-robed cultivator was about to shake hands and make peace, but before he finished speaking, Ning Qi's fists had already landed on his body. There were bursts of explosions in the air, and the void was torn into pieces by Ning Qi's tremendous power. Every breath, the black-robed cultivator was punched thousands of times by Ning Qi. The black-robed cultivator was at the late stage of the nether realm, but he couldn't fight back at all in front of Ning Qi. In less than a breath's time, his cultivation had fallen to the middle stage of the nether realm. He looked at the crazed face in front of him in horror and screamed, "Don't kill me! I didn't hurt that soul at all. I've already told you everything I know. Don't." Bang! I had already summoned Shui's soul back to the central continent, but you took her away. Isn't it all because of you? At this moment, Ning Qi's face was filled with evil. He allowed the demonic qi to crazily swim in his body and transform into his demonic body. The black-robed cultivator roared in his heart while enduring the pain. If he had known that his opponent would become so strong, he wouldn't have used his supernatural power to capture that soul from the central continent. No matter how much he regretted it, it was too late now. After Ning Qi confirmed that Wang Shui's soul had been taken away by that damned disciple of the Jiang family, he no longer planned to let go of the great figure of the underworld that Pill Emperor Dragon Devouring had mentioned. Don't kill me." The black-robed cultivator's voice became weaker and weaker, and his heart was filled with fear. He had cultivated for so many years, and he really didn't want to die like this. Moreover, after the underworld cultivators died, their souls would return to the heavenly Tao, so there really wouldn't be any traces left in this world. Aren't you a great figure? Bang! Am I not an ant? Bang! Fight back! Bang! Brother Beixian, he is already dead. Chapter 2108. Soul Imprint, is he dead? The corners of Ning Qi's mouth rose slightly, and the evil look on his face made the Witch of Black Mountain look at him. But the next moment, he found that Ning Qi had returned to his original appearance, as if the scene just now was an illusion. Then, the black-robed cultivator in front of Ning Qi turned into a faint black smoke and dissipated between heaven and earth. Brother Beixian, since Hing Yu is dead, why don't you come back to my place first? The Witch of Black Mountain said. He had a few doubts in his heart and wanted to ask Ning Qi, but this was obviously not the right place to talk. Brother Black Mountain, don't worry. I don't know what kind of elixir this person wants to refine, but he has captured thousands of souls. I'll go and release them. Ning Qi said faintly and drew his saber. A huge crack suddenly appeared on the ground. The array that was originally arranged by the black-robed cultivator could not stop Ning Qi's saber. At the end of the crack was the place where the black-robed cultivator kept the cauldron. When the Witch of Black Mountain saw the Dragon Slayer saber, his eyes moved slightly. Although he couldn't see through the saber, he had a hunch that this saber was not simple. With a slight movement of his body, Ning Qi appeared in front of the cauldron. He smashed the cauldron with a palm strike, and the tens of thousands of souls inside immediately flew out. They seemed to know that Ning Qi had saved them, so they respectfully bowed to Ning Qi and fled in all directions. Ning Qi looked at the sky calmly, but he couldn't help but clench his fists. The Jiang family's disciple again. His biological mother, Wang Muting, was taken to the immortal tribe by the Jiang family's disciple. Now, even Wang Shui's soul was taken away. The former could be explained, but why was the latter? Was it because of him? Wait, just now the black-robed cultivator said that there was a mysterious imprint on Shui-Er's soul. He saw this imprint at that time, so he secretly kept Shui-Er's soul. Could it be because of this imprint that Shui-Er's soul was taken away by the Wang family's disciple? Ning Qi's expression gradually became solemn. If it was true, what about the imprint on Wang Shui's soul? This imprint was probably not ordinary since it could make the mysterious Jiang family's disciple take action personally. Brother Bei Xian, are you still thinking about your confidante? I speculate that she should not have encountered any danger. Her soul carries the imprint, so she may be the reincarnation of a powerful being. The Witch of Black Mountain landed beside Ning Qi and smiled. Reincarnation of a mighty figure? Ning Qi's eyes flickered slightly. Right, isn't the Witch of Black Mountain a practitioner of the underworld? His understanding of the soul should be very deep. Brother Black Mountain, what do you mean by the reincarnation of a powerful being? Ning Qi looked at the old demon of Black Mountain with a hint of urgency in his eyes. Brother Bei Xian, you're not a cultivator of the netherworld, so it's normal that you don't know much about this. The cultivators of the netherworld are under the control of the heavenly Tao at all times. They go to various places to collect souls. Day after day, year after year, countless souls are collected. Among them, there are occasionally some souls that have their own imprint. These imprints might be restrictions placed on them by their enemies when they were alive, or they might have cultivated some special cultivation technique, or they might be the reincarnation of a powerful cultivator. As for the specifics, if I can see it with my own eyes, I might be able to tell you. The Witch of Black Mountain said. As for the reincarnation of a powerful figure, when one's cultivation reaches a certain level, even if he or she dies, he or she will not be completely destroyed. These powerful figures have various ways to engrave their own imprints on their souls until one day they completely wake up. Since your confidante has a soul imprint on her, and she might have been taken away by someone over there, I guess there's a 70% to 80% chance that her identity is not simple. The reincarnation of a powerful figure, Ning Qi lowered his head and murmured to himself. A hint of killing intent gradually appeared in his eyes. No matter whether Wang Shui was the reincarnation of a powerful figure or whether the disciple of the Jiang family who had appeared again and again was the same person, he would find her and settle all the scores. Reincarnation Field, Rootless Island. This should be the place. Following Ning Qi's lingering aura in the Samsara Temple, Ming Di found his way here. When he realized that this was the territory of the Witch of the Black Mountain, a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. Although the Witch of the Black Mountain was only at the late stage of the Nether Realm, he was extremely powerful. Ming Di had once fought with the Witch of the Black Mountain and had not gained any advantage. He had learned from Zen Wind Azura that Ning Qi was looking for a cultivator from the underworld. Perhaps he had come here because of Pu Yan's Een Mountain, or perhaps he had an unspeakable relationship with the Witch of Black Mountain. A mysterious expert, the Witch of Black Mountain. After a moment of contemplation, Ming Di turned and left. He returned to the Samsara Temple as fast as he could and took out the copper mirror. What is it now? A faint voice came from the copper mirror, sounding a little impatient. Patriarch, I'm not sure, Ming Di said respectfully. If the cultivators of the other families were here, they would be shocked. They never knew that the Azura clan had an patriarch who had ascended to the upper world, and that the messenger in charge of communicating with the lower world was the Azura clan's patriarch. Why? There was a hint of anger in the voice from the copper mirror. A cultivator by the name of the Witch of Black Mountain has risen in the last tens of thousands of years. He is only a late-stage Nether Realm cultivator, but I can't gain the upper hand against him. That mysterious expert is now in the Witch of Black Mountain's territory. If I go there rashly and they join forces, I'm afraid, Ming-Di said in a low voice. I understand. I'll come down now. With that, the copper mirror fell silent. Ming-Di's eyes lit up with joy. He went to the back mountain of the Samsara temple that was listed as a forbidden area. He stood respectfully in front of the back mountain. After waiting for a few hours, a figure walked out from the back mountain. This person looked very similar to Ming-Di. He stood tall and looked to be in his 30s. However, his aura was many times stronger than Ming-Di's. It was as though he could easily crush Ming-Di with just one finger. Jiuli greets the patriarch, Ming-Di said respectfully. His full name was Jiuli Azura, but after becoming Ming-Di, very few people dared to call him by his full name. Everyone called him Ming-Di. But in front of this patriarch, Jiuli Azura didn't dare to put on airs as Ming-Di. This was the only patriarch of the Azura clan in the second heavens of the underworld. A long, long time ago, when the Netherworld Emperor was still ignorant, this ancestor had already reached the second heaven stage. At that time, his father had told him that above the Netherworld realm was the Nether Passage realm. Only by breaking through to that realm could he go to the second heaven stage of the Netherworld realm. And their Azura clan had a patriarch called Yang Azura who was already at the mid-Nether Passage realm. Let's go. Chapter 2109. Emperor Hades. After Ning-Chi and the old witch of Black Mountain returned to the rootless island, they did not leave immediately. Instead, they sat down and discussed with the old witch of Black Mountain. Occasionally, they talked about the Jiang family and expressed their opinions. However, the two of them had a tacit understanding and were very vague when they spoke. Through some information told by the old witch of Black Mountain, Ning-Chi felt that he had a better understanding of the existence behind the system. At the same time, he vaguely discovered that the armor shield with the word Jiang between the eyebrows of the old witch of Black Mountain seemed to only help him improve the speed of his cultivation and check the cultivation information of his opponent. It did not have a variety of functions like the system, because the old demon of the Black Mountain asked Ning-Chi bluntly how many times that thing could increase his cultivation speed. He did not hide anything in his words, as if the function of this armor shield was only to increase the speed of cultivation. Through this, Ning-Chi thought of the conversation he had with Feng Jiuxian and had a guess in his heart. However, Ning-Chi was not 100% sure. Brother Beixian, I think your combat capability is far beyond your realm. Why don't we have a fight? One day, the old witch of Black Mountain suddenly proposed. Ning-Chi smiled slightly when he heard that. Okay. The competition had started very suddenly, and ended very quickly as well. Neither of them had used their full strength. Both of them had hidden trump cards that they had not used. Given their battle prowess, if they were to go all out, the entire rootless island would be destroyed. No matter how many defensive arrays there were, it would be useless. As a result, Ning-Chi lost by one move. Brother Beixian, I'm afraid your talent is much better than mine. My cultivation is so much higher than yours, but I can only beat you by one move. The old witch of Black Mountain looked at Ning-Chi in amazement and then sighed. Ning-Chi smiled, but he was judging whether the old witch of Black Mountain's words were true or not. If the result of the competition was true, Ning-Chi could be sure that the armor shield of the old witch of Black Mountain definitely did not have an abnormal function like his system. Although he had obtained this opportunity, it could only speed up his cultivation and make his combat capability stronger than that of his peers, but it could not directly fight against people of a higher realm like Ning-Chi. What kind of existence is the Jiang family? A trace of thought flashed in Ning-Chi's eyes. Not long after, suddenly, a cultivator broke through the air and landed in front of the old witch of Black Mountain. He whispered, "Master, Ming-Di is here." Ming-Di? The witch of Black Mountain was slightly stunned, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. What is he doing here? Before the cultivator could speak, a faint laugh came from the sky. Old demon Black Mountain, why? Don't you welcome me? Ming Di, witch of Beishuan's 9 Li Azura. 9 Azura, the old witch of Black Azura, 9 Azura, 9 Azura. Ning Qi and the witch of Black Mountain looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. At the same time, the third Ming prince seemed to have noticed the noise and flew over with Meng Tianshu. As for the three guests here, they had already left. Puyen and Yinshan were also released by Ning Qi's signal. Oh, that fellow looks like an Earth Devil expert? The third prince's expression changed slightly when he saw Azura Yang. He stealthily retreated, but Azura Yang saw all his movements. He glanced at the third prince expressionlessly and saw through his cultivation base. A peak human devil was nothing in his eyes. He no longer paid attention to the third prince. Instead, his gaze landed on Ning Qi and the old witch of Black Mountain. These two seemed to be weaker than the third prince, so he couldn't see through them. Their auras were incomparably strange. Lord Ming Di has graced us with his presence. How could I not welcome you? The old witch of Black Mountain smiled. That's Ming Di. What is he doing on our island? I heard that master had some enmity with Ming Di in the past. Is he here to take revenge? The disciples and grand disciples of the old witch of Black Mountain rose into the sky and watched from afar in shock. The 9 Li Azura smiled but didn't say anything. After sizing up Ning Qi and the third Ming prince, he immediately realized that their auras did not resemble underworld cultivators. Patriarch, these two aren't netherworld cultivators, right? Azura Yang looked at Azura Yang. Azura Yang nodded and ignored the old witch of Black Mountain. He asked Ning Qi, "Where did you enter the underworld from?" Ning Qi smiled. "Senior, what do you mean? Stop pretending. You and him. The three of you are not cultivators from the netherworld plane. There is a strand of the aura of a living person on you. Tell me where the spatial crack appeared and I will make the decision to spare your life." Azura Yang pointed at Ning Qi, the third prince, and Meng Tianshu. "What if you don't tell me?" Ning Qi smiled. "Then I'll suppress you directly." Azura Yang smiled. "However, ants like you are not qualified for me to kill you personally." He looked at Azura Yang and said, "I'll give you 10 minutes. Yes, emissary." Azura Yang nodded. He seemed to be deliberately hiding his relationship with Azura Yang, but he did not know that Ning Qi and the old witch of Black Mountain had seen through it. The old witch of Black Mountain had a solemn look on his face. If they were to fight today, should he help Ning Qi? Ning Qi was the only one of his kind he had seen in so many years. They could be regarded as fellow disciples of the same sect. If Ning Qi died, he would be lonely again. While he was thinking, Azura Yang had already made his move. The nether energy around them crazily pressed towards them, and the temperature in the air dropped rapidly. The cultivators of the underworld were different from the cultivators of the demon race. They were similar to the cultivators of the immortal race. They did not cultivate their bodies, but their supernatural powers. In an instant, the temperature had dropped to a level that even an ordinary nether realm cultivator could not bear. And this was only the temperature in the periphery. Ning Qi, who was the target, was already covered in a thin layer of ice. This thin layer of ice was filled with boundless nether energy. He was not as fragile as he looked. The third prince protected Meng Tianshu immediately. Otherwise, with Meng Tianshu's cultivation and being so close to Ning Qi, he would have been frozen to death. That is Emperor Hades' black ice technique. He really came with ill intentions today. But, Master Ancestor, is this guest really not a cultivator of the underworld? This is the first time I heard that a cultivator from the outside world can enter our underworld. Chapter 21:10. The Yang Azura. Emissary, he has been suppressed. Are the other two? The Nine Liazura cupped his hands toward the Yang Azura. Before the Yang Azura could say anything, the sound of ice breaking rang out from below. The Nine Liazura looked down in disbelief to see that Ning Qi, who had been suppressed by his profound ice art, had broken out of the ice. There was a pile of ice fragments at his feet. Impossible! A look of surprise flashed through the Nine Liazura's eyes. His profound ice art had already been cultivated to the peak. Even if an existence at the peak of the nether realm was trapped by it, they wouldn't have any special methods to restrain his profound ice art. They could only silently wait for death. But this person had broken through his profound ice art so easily. It seemed that he had relied on brute force? The Black Mountain Demon's lips curled into a smile. An ordinary cultivator like the Nine Liazura wanted to trap Ning Qi, who had also obtained a huge opportunity. What a joke! However, the Black Mountain Demon didn't let down his guard just because Ning Qi had broken out of the ice. The Yang Azura still hadn't attacked. His opponent was a mid-nether passage expert. Even if he joined hands with Ning Qi, they definitely wouldn't be able to beat him. Interesting. The Yang Azura smiled mysteriously at Ning Qi. What a powerful physical body. Does the place you came from focus on body tempering arts? He wasn't asking Ning Qi, but muttered to himself. Not waiting for Ning Qi to reply, he glanced at the Nine Liazura. The Nine Liazura's expression was a bit ugly. When he looked at Ning Qi again, there was a trace of dense killing intent in his eyes. This brat had made him lose face in front of the Patriarch from the very start. In the future, he was hoping that the Patriarch would give him some pointers so that he could break through the shackles of the great circle of the Netherworld realm and reach the Nether Passage realm. He would ascend to the second heaven stage of the Netherworld realm. If he left a bad impression on the Patriarch because of this, it might affect his future prospects. Thinking of that, the Nine Liazura snorted inside. Powerful physical body? Then I'll directly destroy your physical body. It was still the profound ice art, but this time, a huge sword of ice had condensed in the sky. There was an ice storm around the sword, and the cold wind caused the nearby cultivators to feel a stabbing pain on their skin. Their bodies' temperatures plummeted, and they had to retreat hundreds of meters before they felt a bit better. Even I won't be able to handle this attack. The third Ming prince wore a solemn expression. He could clearly sense the apocalyptic power contained within the mystical ice sword. Suppress! The Nine Liazura shouted coldly. His gigantic sword turned into a bolt of lightning that shot towards Ning Qi's head. Ning Qi smiled. He opened the 9 inner hidden gates one at a time. Soon, his aura was a full 64 times stronger than it was just now. Then, Ning Qi flew up and directly punched the huge ice sword. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out, causing the ears of many nearby cultivators to go numb. Ning Qi's fist directly shattered the huge ice sword and landed on the Nine Liazura behind it. Bang! The Nine Liazura was sent flying like a cannonball by Ning Qi. He turned into specks of light and disappeared from everyone's sight. Yang Azura frowned slightly and looked at Ning Qi with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The disciples of the Witch of the Black Mountain were in disbelief when they saw what had happened. The Hades Emperor had been defeated by the guest of their ancestor? Whoosh! There was an air-piercing sound as the Hades Emperor flew back from the distance. Half of his chin was deformed and his eyes were filled with shame and anger as he glared at Ning Qi. Ha ha! Interesting. I didn't think that even the current Hades Emperor would be no match for you. No wonder you dare to come to my underworld. Yang Azura laughed loudly. The Nine Liazura's face was filled with shame. Esteemed envoy, I just don't know if you can take this punch of mine. Yang Azura ignored the Nine Liazura. He threw a punch at Ning Qi as soon as he finished speaking. It seemed like a simple punch to the crowd, but Ning Qi could feel the aura of death. Beneath the calm punch was a power that was countless times stronger than all of his strength combined. Ning Qi's muscles began to wriggle like worms, and his body began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. By the time the righteous Sun Azura's fist landed on his body, Ning Qi had already transformed into a 1,000 zhang tall giant. He revealed his primordial immortal fiend god physique, and used his peak condition to receive the punch. Boom! Step by step, Ning Qi stumbled back a full 10 steps. Every step he took left a deep footprint on the ground. Only then did he manage to neutralize the force of Yang Azura's punch. His arms, which he had used to defend himself, had already caved in. His bones seemed to have been broken, and his health points had also dropped by 10 yuan. He had a total of 80 yuan of health. Each yuan was equivalent to 10 billion yuan. His opponent's punch had taken away 100 billion yuan of his health. Furthermore, it seemed that Yang Azura had only casually thrown this punch. He hadn't used his true power. Otherwise, Ning Qi would probably die in just 2 punches. This is the power of the mid-nether passage realm. Ning Qi narrowed his eyes and looked at the Yang Azura. Back in the immortal prison, he had never fought against an Earth Devil expert. This was his first time personally experiencing this kind of extraordinary power. Perhaps only when his cultivation base had truly taken the second step and reached the human immortal realm or the great circle of the human devil realm would he be able to fight against this Yang Azura. This fellow finally knows how powerful I am. The third Ming prince looked at Ning Qi with a smile that wasn't a smile. However, he was already clenching his fist. Although he wanted to watch a good show, his opponent clearly wouldn't let him and Meng Tianshu off. If Ning Qi died, perhaps he would also die here. The subordinates of the old demon of the Black Mountain did not know how powerful Yang Shura's punch was, but they could sense an extremely terrifying aura from Ning Qi's current state. At the same time, Ning Qi, who had the strength to easily send Ming Di flying, was almost crippled by Yang Shura's punch. From this, they could see how terrifying Yang Shura was. His strength had probably surpassed the limits of the first heaven of the underworld. Are all the cultivators of the upper world this strong? Fiery gazes fell on Yang Azura. Experts, whether they were friend or foe, were worthy of respect. His physical body is actually this strong? If the Patriarch's punch landed on me, I'm afraid The Nine Azura looked at Ning Qi with a trace of shock. He finally understood why he wasn't a match for Ning Qi. Yang Azura's shock only lasted for an instant. He examined Ning Qi from head to toe, feeling a bit incredulous. Chapter 21:11. Is there no one in the higher realms? Senior's punch is pretty strong. Ning Qi smiled faintly. His heavy injuries were healing at a visible rate. His physical body was not something an ordinary cultivator could compare to. Not only was it powerful, but its recovery ability was also great. Even the Yang Azura, who was at the mid-nether passage realm, couldn't compare to a tenth of Ning Qi's physical body. Otherwise, the demon race's body-tempering arts wouldn't have been so famous throughout the immortal realm. You have indeed surpassed my expectations. I don't want you to die now. How about this? I lack a servant. What do you think? Yang Azura looked at Ning Qi with a smile that wasn't a smile. Patriarch, this is... Julie Azura was shocked. Yang Azura wanted to bring Ning Qi to the higher realms? Even he didn't have such qualifications. Servant? Third Prince Ming's mouth twitched. No matter what, Ning Qi was the #1 genius of the immortal prison. Even a late Earth demon might not agree to take him as a disciple. Furthermore, he had a good relationship with the Holy Maiden of the Lucifer tribe, and his master was Devil King Zunshan of Yanshan City. Yet this Earth demon only wanted to take him as a servant? There's no need for a servant. I have no interest in serving others. Ning Qi smiled and suddenly swung his saber at Yang Azura. The corners of Yang Azura's lips curled up and a faint look of disdain appeared in his eyes. Saber light flashed. Jili Azura looked down in disbelief. In the next moment, his body was cut in half and he fell to the ground. However, Jili Azura was at the great circle of the nether realm. Ning Qi's attack power wasn't enough to instantly kill him. Yang Azura's eyes flashed with anger. You dare? He had thought that Ning Qi was going to attack him, but he had not expected that Ning Qi would be able to turn his blade around and cut him, a direct descendant, in two. Ning Qi had seriously injured the Nine Li Azura right in front of him. It was not the Nine Li Azura who had lost face, but the Yang Azura himself. Senior, according to the rules of the underworld, envoys from the upper realm are not allowed to kill people in this realm. If they didn't abide by the rules, wouldn't all the cultivators in the first heaven of the underworld have died long ago? If your upper realm finds out, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences. The Witch of the Black Mountain suddenly said. Yang Azura, who was about to attack, was stunned. He looked at the old demon of Black Mountain coldly, but he was a little afraid because of these words. What the Witch of the Black Mountain said was right. The messengers from the upper world were not allowed to fight in the lower world. This was an order from the higher authorities. However, how could ordinary cultivators know of this order? How did he know? I happen to have a few envoys from the upper realm that I'm on good terms with. If I tell them about your actions today, I wonder if you— The corners of the Witch of Black Mountain's mouth rose slightly, and at the same time, he secretly transmitted a voice to Ning Qi. I can only hold him for a while. This person will not give up killing you because of my threat. Brother Beixian, go as far as you can. If you are lucky, you may be able to return to the world where you are. Ning Qi smiled and transmitted a voice to the Witch of the Black Mountain. Brother Black Mountain, I'll go first. Before Yang Azura could react, Ning Qi's good fortune field had already been opened, and the third Prince Ming and Meng Tianshu were sucked into it. Then he flew up into the sky. 90,000 kilometers in an instant. In an instant, Ning Qi had disappeared in front of everyone. Those with low cultivation couldn't even see Ning Qi's movements. Brother Beixian, you seem to be a bit fast. There was a smile in the eyes of the Witch of the Black Mountain. Emissary. The Nine Li Azura's body had returned to its original state, but his face was pale. Ning Qi's saber had directly destroyed his source, and he had lost too much essence blood. If he wanted to recover to his peak strength, it would take him thousands of years. This had extended the time it would take for him to break through the bottleneck and reach the Nether Passage realm. He hated Ning Qi to the core. Seeing Ning Qi escape, the Nine Li Azura subconsciously wanted to chase him, but thinking of that saber, he didn't have much confidence, so he could only look at Yang Azura. You're just at the late stage of the Nether realm, but you know so much. Haha, you're right. There is such a rule in the upper world. However, this boy is not a cultivator of the netherworld, so this rule doesn't apply to him. Yang Azura sneered. Then he disappeared on the spot and chased after Ning Qi. His mind had been disturbed by the Witch of the Black Mountain's words just now, and he had almost been fooled. The Nine Li Azura looked at the Witch of the Black Mountain coldly. As a cultivator of the netherworld, what do you want to do by colluding with a cultivator from the outer world? You say he is a cultivator from the outer world, so he is a cultivator from the outer world? You need evidence for everything. Don't think that just because you're Emperor Hades, you can talk nonsense and distort the truth. You have people in the upper world, but don't you think we don't have people in the upper world? The Witch of the Black Mountain looked at the Nine Li Azura and said indifferently. The Nine Li Azura was stunned, and his eyes became suspicious. Does the Witch of the Black Mountain really have a connection with the emissaries from the upper world? Because of his relationship with Yang Azura, the Nine Li Azura was quite familiar with the emissaries from the upper world. There were more than 10 people like Yang Azura. Just like the registrars of the Samsara Temple, they also had their own task. It was just that Yang Azura was on duty during this period. If what the Witch of the Black Mountain said was true, he had to think more deeply. You have nothing to say? Since I have nothing to do here, it's time to invite Emperor Hades out, right? The Witch of the Black Mountain put his hands in his sleeves and glanced at the Nine Azura. He did not show any respect to the Nine Azura just because he was Emperor Hades, the ruler of this world. The Nine Azura could do nothing to the Witch of the Black Mountain. The Witch of the Black Mountain's cultivation was a whole level lower than his, but his combat strength was not inferior to his. Moreover, it was very likely that the Witch of the Black Mountain was supported by the emissaries from the upper world who valued him. The Witch of the Black Mountain snorted and left. Seeing this, the cultivators on the rootless island looked at the Witch of the Black Mountain with even more respect. In the whole first heaven of the underworld, the Witch of the Black Mountain was the only one who dared to confront Emperor Hades. After the Nine Azura left, the Witch of the Black Mountain looked in the direction where Ningqi had left. After a few breaths of silence, he turned and left. He had done his best to buy some time for Ningqi. He could not die with Ningqi when he knew that he was no match for Yang Azura. As for whether Ningqi could escape in this limited time, it was up to him. Chapter 21:12. Chapter 21:12. Chapter 21:12 Envy and Jealousy. We're here. Ningqi breathed a sigh of relief. The spatial rift was right in front of him, and as long as he returned to the central continent, the underworld cultivator would not be able to completely enter the central continent without possession. Even if the Yang Shura had the same divine ability as the black-robed cultivator and could temporarily send a part of his body to the central continent, Ningqi would not be afraid. So it's here. A voice rang in Ningqi's ears. Ningqi was slightly startled. His body instantly shifted several thousand feet to the side. An incomparably turbulent wave of nether chi pierced through the air from where he was originally, and finally landed on the spatial crack. The spatial crack was suddenly filled with this terrifying wave of nether chi, and suddenly, a small-scale void storm occurred. The passageway continued to collapse, and in an instant, the spatial crack disappeared before Ningqi's eyes. Little guy, now that the spatial rift is gone, how do you plan to return to your original world? Yang Azura looked at Ningqi with a faint smile. Ningqi's expression gradually became dignified. The Dragon Slayer saber appeared in his hands. He had opened all 6 of the 9 inner hidden gates. The spatial crack had already been destroyed by Yang Azura. If he wanted to return to the central continent, he could only do so through Mount Heart and Soul. However, this method would require him to pay a large number of Dragon Slayer crystals to the system. Ningqi did not have that many Dragon Slayer crystals at the moment. What? You still want to fight with me? Very well, I'll let you use one hand. Yang Shura had a mocking look in his eyes. He put one hand behind his back and beckoned Ningqi with the other. What's that? Ningqi looked behind Yang Azura in shock. When Yang Azura turned around, there was nothing behind him. There was nothing there. Yang Azura's face turned ashen. When he turned around again, Ningqi was nowhere to be seen. Little mouse, you're quite fast. Yang Azura muttered to himself with a fake smile as he chased after Ningqi's aura. Although he appeared to be indifferent on the surface, his heart was filled with rage. He had spent quite a bit of time to track down Ningqi's tracks. Yet, in the end, he had been easily fooled by Ningqi. Ningqi's speed was extremely fast. Without slowing down, the righteous Yang Azura would not be able to catch up to him for some time. Or rather, the righteous Yang Azura believed that Ningqi had nowhere to run. Thus, the righteous Yang Azura began to play a game of cat and mouse. He did not use his full strength to chase after Ningqi. Gradually, the immortal spiritual energy within Ningqi's body was no longer enough to support him to move 90,000 miles in an instant. His speed gradually slowed down. Little fellow, why have you slowed down? Are you out of energy? 1,000 feet behind Ning Qi, the Azura of Yang was walking in the air, as if he was taking a stroll, laughing loudly at Ning Qi. I've always been in a state of combat, so I can't enter the top-level cultivation training ground. I have to think of a way to delay for 24 hours. Ning Qi's brows furrowed slightly, and his figure suddenly stopped. You're not running anymore? The righteous young Azura looked at Ning Qi with a faint smile. Senior, you're so fast. I won't be able to get away even if I keep running. Ning Qi smiled. If you're not going to run, then come with me. The righteous young Azura smiled, and then turned around to walk in the direction of Samsara City. He seemed to have determined that Ning Qi was out of energy. Samsara City, Samsara Temple. The ninely Azura stared at Ning Qi with eyes full of murderous intent. He looked at the righteous young Azura and said respectfully, Emissary, this young man is not a cultivator of the underworld, but he entered the underworld without permission. He should be killed. The senior didn't say that he would kill me now. What's the rush? Why don't we have a fight? Ning Qi smiled. The ninely Azura's eyes flashed with anger and a hint of jealousy. He ignored Ning Qi's words and looked at the righteous young Azura. He's still of some use to me. If I'm going to kill him, I'll bring him to the second layer of heaven. That way I won't be caught. The righteous young Azura smiled faintly. The jealousy in the ninely Azura's heart burst out uncontrollably when he heard that. An outsider had obtained the right to enter the second layer of heaven, while he, a direct descendant of the righteous young Azura and a cultivator at the peak of the nether realm, could not enter the second layer of underworld. The contrast made him feel uneasy. The righteous young Azura's face turned cold when he saw that the ninely Azura was about to speak again. What? Do I have to ask for your permission before I make a decision? I wouldn't dare. The ninely Azura bowed his head and cupped his hands. His eyes were full of resentment, but his expression had returned to normal when he raised his head. Soon, the three of them arrived at the back mountain of the Samsara Temple. The ninely Azura stood where he was and watched as Ning Qi and the righteous young Azura entered the back mountain. Even he had never been to that place, but an outsider had beaten him to it. The ninely Azura clenched his fists so tightly that they made cracking sounds. He stood where he was for a full 10 minutes before he turned around and left. Through this door is the second heaven of the underworld. Do you see what the ninely Azura looks like? He wants to go to the second heaven, but he can't. You should be content. The righteous young Azura smiled at Ning Qi. There was a stone door in front of the two of them. It was filled with light blue light, and there was a hint of the void aura inside. The stone door looked ordinary, but the righteous young Azura tapped on it a few times, and it turned into a passageway. Senior, why don't I stay here as the underworld emperor, and you take the ninely Azura to the second heaven? I'm sure he'll be grateful to you. He'll even die if you ask him to, right? Ning Qi said with a smile. The righteous young Azura smiled, and then his expression turned solemn. He grabbed Ning Qi's shoulder and walked through the stone door. Ning Qi felt his vision darken. Then, the scenery around him changed drastically. Even the underworld qi in the air was at least 3 times stronger than before. Behind him was a building similar to the stone door they had just entered. The place he was in looked like a hall. As soon as the two of them appeared, a cultivator came up to them and greeted the righteous young Azura respectfully, Master. At the same time, the young cultivator also looked at Ning Qi curiously. He wondered why his master had suddenly brought a cultivator up to the first heaven of the underworld this time. Did anyone come to see me when I left? The righteous young Azura asked calmly. The young cultivator replied respectfully, Master, the sect leader of the Dark Spirit sect came to see you. He's now waiting in the guest hall. I see. Take this lad away and keep an eye on him. Chapter 21:13. Chapter 21:13. Chapter 21:13. Little Lin, don't think about running. You won't be able to escape from here. Yang Shilua glanced at Ningqi and left the hall with a faint smile. His disciple's eyes immediately revealed a look of understanding when he heard this. Turned out that this guy was captured by his master. Let's go. The disciple of Yang Azura snorted coldly. He grabbed Ningqi by the neck and dragged him out. Senior apprentice brother, how should I address you? Ningqi said with a smile. Don't try to get close to me. The disciple said coldly. Your master told you to watch over me. If you can't, what kind of punishment do you think you'll receive? Ningqi smiled. The disciple paused and looked Ningqi up and down with a smile that wasn't a smile. You think I can't watch over an ant-like existence like you? It's hard to say. Ningqi smiled. Master has sealed your 9 spirit points. You can't use any of your cultivation. If you can escape from the surveillance hall, I'll cut off my head and let you sit on it. The disciple sneered and ignored Ningqi. No matter what Ningqi said, he pretended not to hear it. Soon, the two of them arrived in front of a heavily guarded building. There were 2 strange beasts carved out of some unknown material in front of the building. There was faint nether energy around them. Ningqi didn't dare to underestimate these 2 strange beasts. The power they contained was probably enough to suppress him. Senior apprentice brother Lin. There were 2 underworld cultivators standing in front of the door. Their auras were similar to the middle stage of the nether realm. They were existences that could suppress a region in the first heaven of the underworld, but in the second heaven, they could only watch the door. It was enough to show how great the difference was between the second heaven and the first heaven. Lin Feng smiled. Open the door. Master said to lock this person here. Yes. The 2 of them looked at Ningqi in shock. The fact that the Yang Azura had personally spoken meant that this person must have offended the Yang Azura. As they were shocked, the 2 of them did not slow down. They formed a few hand seals, which struck the 2 extraterrestrial beasts before the gate. Following that, a loud rumbling sound rang out from the gate as it slowly sank to the ground. Little Lin, your master only told you to watch over me. He didn't tell you to send me to my death. Once Lin Feng brought Ningqi into this building, he saw that it was a prison. There were all kinds of cultivators imprisoned inside iron bars. These cultivators' cultivation bases were not weak. There was not a single one below the netherworld realm. At the very least, they were at the early netherworld realm. There were even some at the great circle of the netherworld realm. There were even some whose auras were close to Yang Azura's. They were probably at the early nether passage realm. Shaolin. There was a flash of anger in Lin Feng's eyes, but he resisted the urge to attack Ningqi. Instead, he said mockingly, Master only told me to watch over you, not to keep you alive. Didn't I lock you here to watch over you? I remember you said that if I escaped from here, what kind of punishment would I receive? Ah! Lin Feng laughed maniacally. Then, he picked a cell with the most cultivators and threw Ningqi inside. The cultivators in the prison were all ferocious as they glared at Lin Feng. Their hands and feet weren't restricted, and they didn't have any restrictive spells on them. However, they didn't dare to do anything. After glaring at Lin Feng, they glared at Ningqi with evil smiles on their faces. From the fact that Lin Feng didn't throw Ningqi into the most sinister prison, it could be seen that he didn't dare to easily send Ningqi to his death. Before leaving, he glanced at Ningqi with a gloating expression. Little Lin, you're leaving just like this? Remember to say hello to your master for me. Lin Feng paused for a moment before quickly disappearing from Ningqi's field of vision. Ningqi reluctantly withdrew his gaze, then turned around and calmly looked at the hundreds of underworld cultivators in the prison who were staring at him unblinkingly. There were men and women among these netherworld cultivators. Their clothes were ragged and they didn't look too good. However, it seemed their cultivation bases hadn't been restricted. Newcomer, tell big sister, how did you offend Yang Azura? By Hua Fairy, don't tell me you've fallen for this pretty boy? You don't say, his skin is so soft and tender, and he's also so handsome. Even I'm a bit moved, hee. A burly man said as he walked towards Ning Chi. The rest of the people just looked on with schadenfreude. Ning Chi's lips curled up slightly. I'll give you a chance. Kneel down now and I won't kill you. The burly man was stunned for a moment. Then, the entire prison burst into wild laughter. Even the cultivators in the other prisons nearby began to laugh out loud. Did you hear what this kid said? He wants us to kneel before him. Ha, I've lived for so long, and I think this is the funniest joke I've ever heard. The burly man held his belly and laughed. It was no wonder that they looked down on Ning Chi. After Lin Feng's 9 spirit points were sealed by the Yang Azura, Ning Chi's aura was only equal to a 9 tribulation creator. He was far weaker than an early Netherrealm master. In the next moment, a figure appeared next to Ning Chi. The third Ming prince looked around before looking at Ning Chi. You've been captured? You already know the answer, but you're still asking. Kill all those who aren't kneeling on the ground, Ning Chi said indifferently. Then, he sat down cross-legged on the ground. Just now, these people had ill intentions towards him, so his battle state that was about to end restarted. The sudden appearance of the third Ming prince surprised these people. In the next moment, the burly man closest to Ning Chi suddenly let out a miserable howl. His heart was pulled out by the third Ming prince and crushed. The burly man's eyes were filled with shock. Nether realm peak? The third Prince Ming was at the peak of the human devil realm, but these people couldn't tell the difference between demonic energy and nether energy. They just thought that the third Prince Ming cultivated some special technique that changed the flavor of nether energy, so they thought that he was a peak nether realm expert. The cultivators in the prison all quieted down. Even the other prisons that had been causing a ruckus were silent. Don't kill me. The burly man's eyes were filled with deep fear. He retreated step by step. Although he had lost his heart, this kind of injury would only consume a little bit of his lifespan. It wasn't enough to kill him. The third Ming prince smiled and appeared next to the burly man. With a palm, he smashed the burly man's head and body into a bloody mist. He couldn't be more dead. After the burly man died, the third Ming prince killed a few cultivators closest to him. Only then did the other cultivators suddenly remember Ning Chi's words. Those who didn't kneel on the ground, kill them all. Chapter 21:14. Did you talk a lot just now? They're already kneeling on the ground. Are we going to kill them or not? The third prince looked at Ning Chi. Let them kneel for now, Ning Chi indifferently said. The third prince walked back to Ning Chi's side and sat down. If it weren't for Ning Chi, he wouldn't even bother killing these ants. Seeing that Ning Chi had no intention of attacking, the cultivators in the prison sighed with relief. Only then did they begin to guess Ning Chi's identity. Time passed by slowly. All the cultivators quietly knelt in front of Ning Chi. Since Ning Chi didn't tell them to get up, no one dared to get up. Ha ha, look at those idiots. They've kicked a metal plate. They're all kneeling so respectfully. It's like they're worshipping their ancestors. Luckily, Lin Feng didn't throw him here, or we'd be kneeling. Hey, what are you glaring at me for? If you think you're strong, then come and hit me. Aren't we all locked up here? What are you glaring at me for? The third prince was a bit impatient. He raised his head to look at the fellow who had been the loudest. That fellow wasn't afraid of the third prince at all. Instead, he taunted and provoked him. Furthermore, his cultivation base was only at the mid-nether realm. The third prince's eyes were filled with killing intent. He tightly gripped the bars in front of him, and then with a shout, he began to pull them apart. The fellow who had provoked him jumped in fright and then burst into laughter. Everyone, look! Has this fellow become an idiot? Brother, This is made of 10,000-year netherworld iron. Brute force alone won't be able to open it. Furthermore, it's immune to nether chi. Don't waste your time. Let alone the great circle of the nether realm, even an early nether passage expert wouldn't be able to open it. Don't you see those people obediently standing there? Creak. With an ear-piercing sound, the 2 iron bars in front of the third Ming prince were slowly pulled apart. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the third Ming prince walked up to the cell of the guy who had provoked him, grabbed the iron bars, and exerted his strength. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, the bars were slowly bent by the third prince. How is this possible? This is made of 10,000-year-old netherworld iron. How could he tear it apart? I've never seen such divine power. Is this person at the great circle of the nether passage realm? Impossible. Even the cells with the darkest auras were stirred. 3 figures appeared in front of their cells and stared at the third prince in astonishment. The 3 of them were at the early nether passage realm. Even with their power, they were unable to break the restrictions of this place. The third prince's actions shocked the 3 of them. Who is this kid? I don't recognize him. His aura seems much weaker than ours. He shouldn't be at the nether passage realm. Why is he so strong? Soon, the third Ming prince tore open a hole large enough for people to enter. The guy who had provoked the third Ming prince stood rooted to the spot, staring at the third Ming prince in disbelief. You talked a lot just now? The third Ming prince said lightly. Senior, spare my life. It was this lowly one's mouth that was cheap. This lowly one slapped himself. Senior, please spare this lowly one's life. This fellow was only at the mid-netherworld realm. How could he not be shocked to see the third Ming prince appear in front of him? He begged for mercy in fear before slapping himself heavily. Once, twice. Soon, he had slapped himself a few hundred times. His face was swollen. The third Ming prince looked on indifferently. The others didn't dare to act recklessly. The cultivators kneeling in front of Ning Qi first looked at the opening of the prison door in fear. Then, they looked at Ning Qi and the third Ming prince. In the end, they resisted the urge to run away and didn't dare to make a move. Although they didn't see the light of day here, at least their lives were safe. Once the time was up, the Yang Azura would let them out. There was no need to risk their lives. All right. The third Ming prince indifferently said. That fellow subconsciously stopped and looked at the third Ming prince in terror. Senior, you've forgiven me? You hit me so many times, but I'm not even injured. You want me to forgive you? All right, come here. I'll just hit you once. The third Ming prince said with a smile. Once, the crowd wore a strange expression. They had already witnessed the terrifying strength of the third Ming prince, who was able to bend the underworld steel. How terrifying would that be? Senior, I was wrong. Please spare my life. The guy's eyes flickered with despair. He suddenly let out a roar, someone's crossing. The third Ming prince appeared in front of him with a flicker and slapped the guy's face. Before the guy could finish his sentence, half of his face was gone. The flesh and bones turned into a mist of blood. Following this, the third Ming prince slapped him again. Bang! The headless corpse fell heavily to the ground. After that, the third Ming prince glanced at the rest of the cultivators. After a series of cries, the third Ming prince walked out from the cell and sat down beside Ning Qi. The cultivators in the cells remained silent, not even daring to breathe heavily. They peeked at the cell from before and realized that not a single person was left alive. All the cultivators were dead. Not a single one was left alive. They're too noisy. The third Ming prince whispered to Ning Qi. Ning Qi closed his eyes and smiled, nodding slightly. The cultivators who had been paying attention to the third Ming prince all looked at Ning Qi with shock. Such an expert seemed to be the subordinate of that ant-like fellow? They were constantly speculating about Ning Qi's origins. The 3 early nether passage experts exchanged a glance, and returned to the shadows. It wasn't that they hadn't thought about asking the third Ming prince to release them, but this prison wasn't simple at all. Leaving the prison was just the first step. Leaving in one piece was extremely difficult. The two beast statues at the entrance would kill any cultivator who tried to leave without permission. Very quickly, 24 hours passed. Ning Qi's battle state was lifted. He smiled and sent the third Ming prince into his fortune domain. Then he took out all the dragon slaughtering crystals he had, leaving only 10,000 for the peak cultivation training ground. A total of 100,000 dragon slaughtering crystals were deducted by the system just like that. Chapter 21:15. Vanish. How did he vanish just like that? What kind of technique is this? Has he already escaped? How terrifying! With such a technique, how could Lin Feng have imprisoned him? Did he intentionally come here to get a feel for the atmosphere? All the cultivators in the prison noticed that Ning Qi had disappeared. The three early Nether Passage cultivators who had been hiding in the shadows also walked over to the door. They looked at the place Ning Qi had disappeared in, dumbfounded. Then they exchanged a glance, seeing the shock in each other's eyes. This person's divine abilities are strange and unfathomable. His subordinates possess divine power that none of us can compare to. He's probably not an ordinary person. Yang Azura, perhaps he's kicked an iron plate by imprisoning him here. Brother Yang, it's settled. The Yin Spirit sect master walked out of the guest hall with Yang Azura. He was thin and had a large face. Nether Chi surged out of his body, and it felt like there was wind around him as he walked. Brother Yin, don't worry. I, Yang Azura, don't have a habit of taking back my words. Yang Azura smiled slightly. All right, then I'll be leaving first. Brother Yang, please wait a moment. The Yin Spirit sect master smiled and nodded. His figure vanished like a gust of wind. Lin Feng, didn't I tell you to keep an eye on that fellow? Yang Azura looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was slightly startled, feeling a little surprised. Could it be that his master really wanted him to keep an eye on that guy at all times? What did that fellow have to be watched like this? Master, disciple has already imprisoned him in the Nether God prison. Even a Nether Passage expert wouldn't be able to escape, right? Lin Feng cupped his fist. Yang Azura frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong. He coldly glanced at Lin Feng and quickly walked toward the underworld divine prison. Lin Feng hastily followed, feeling a bit apprehensive inside. It didn't take long for the two of them to reach the gates of the Nether God prison. The two guards at the gates were shocked to see Yang Azura, and they hastily bowed. "Open the gates," said Yang Azura indifferently. "Yes." The two guards formed a seal with their hands, and soon the door slowly sank down. The underworld divine prison was not built by Yang Azura. Yang Azura could not control the formation outside the gate. Instead, it was personally set up by the chief of the supervisory hall. These two guards were also the direct subordinates of the chief of the supervisory hall. Hence, only they had a special way to open the gates of the underworld divine prison. "Master, he's here?" Lin Feng brought the Yang Azura to the entrance of the cell where he had previously imprisoned Ning Qi. In the end, he was dumbfounded to see that the iron bars made of 10,000-year underworld iron had been forcibly broken open, allowing a person to freely enter and exit. Lin Feng was shocked and hurriedly looked around. His gaze swept across the faces of all the prisoners, but in the end, he did not even find a single strand of hair on Ning Qi's head. Impossible! Lin Feng rushed into the prison and searched frantically. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, he looked at the prisoners with an anxious look in his eyes. "Where is the cultivator I locked up? Where did he go?" "I don't know." All the prisoners shook their heads in unison. They were also muttering in their hearts. A living person disappeared just like that? He ignored the restrictive magic of the Nether Divine Prison? What kind of power did he need to be able to do that? Even someone at the Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm should have caused some disturbance, right? The righteous son Azura walked into the cell slowly and glanced at the faces of every prisoner. His eyes then fell on the bent dark iron, and he seemed to be deep in thought. Then he noticed another cell. The dark iron was also bent, and the cultivators in the cell were all dead. Master Lin Feng walked over to the Yang Azura, his face pale. He still didn't understand how Ningqi had managed to escape. When he thought of what Ningqi had said to him before, Lin Feng could not help but clench his fists tightly. The anger in his heart surged out uncontrollably. At the same time, he felt a sense of humiliation. He felt that he had been fooled by Ningqi perfectly. The Yang Azura waved his hand, telling Lin Feng not to say anything. He then beckoned to a female prisoner. Bai Hua Fairy, tell me how they disappeared. Bai Hua Fairy was a bit reluctant. She walked up to Yang Azura and told him what happened in a low voice. When Bai Hua Fairy mentioned the Ming Third Prince, Yang Azura's face couldn't help but twitch a bit. He had overlooked this from the very beginning. When he was on the Rootless Island, Yang Azura's attention was all on Ningqi, so he didn't pay much attention to the sudden disappearance of the Ming Third Prince and Meng Tianshu, but he didn't think that the brat had used some sort of secret technique to hide them away. To be able to capture living people and enter the spatial channel freely, even at the second heaven stage, the spatial channel didn't sense anything strange. What kind of secret art is this? What world's cultivator has such a technique? The Yang Azura sank into contemplation. The netherworld was different from other places. Because its cultivators often searched for souls, they had seen countless worlds. Even the Yang Azura was unable to determine Ningqi's origin in a short time. That's all I know. Saying so, Bai Hua Fairy retreated back into the crowd. Shifu, it was your disciple's mistake. I didn't keep an eye on this person. Your disciple is willing to accept punishment. Lin Feng bowed his head and clasped his hands. Go to the punishment valley and reflect on your mistake. The Yang Azura said casually. Lin Feng's body shook a bit, then nodded and walked out of the Dark God prison. The punishment valley. This was a place similar to the Dark God prison. The only difference was that it was a place where the surveillance palace punished their own people for their mistakes. The flow of time there was slower than the outside world, and the dark aura was much, much less. Going into seclusion there was basically a form of torture. Little mouse, I didn't think you'd still run away. But don't be too happy yet, I'll catch you sooner or later. The Yang Azura was planning to interrogate Ningqi about the body tempering technique he practiced, but he didn't expect Ningqi to escape after he went to the guest hall and discussed some things with the Dark Spirit Sect's patriarch. He didn't know what method Ningqi had used, but looking at the dark iron, the Yang Azura didn't think that Ningqi was still in the Dark God prison. Therefore, after he left the Dark God prison, he flew into the sky and spread his divine sense in all directions with the surveillance palace as the center. After searching for half a month, he still couldn't find Ningqi's whereabouts, so the Yang Azura retracted his divine sense. Chapter 21:16 9 Inner Hidden Gates, 7th Gate Top Training Field. Ningqi grasped a heaven-grade demon essence bead in each hand. Incomparably surging demonic energy entered his body from his hands, tempering his mortal body. Before he arrived at the immortal continent, his cultivation wouldn't be able to rise to the next level. But Ningqi could still put some effort into the confining dragon-elephant art and 9 Inner Hidden Gate. As long as these two cultivation methods could rise to the next level, his combat strength would naturally rise as well. After about 15 or 16 years, Ningqi finally broke the inhibition that Yang Shura had placed on him. His cultivation was fully restored. Following this, Ning Qi constantly absorbed the demonic energy from the demon essence beads, tempering his mortal body and cultivating the confining dragon elephant art and 9 inner hidden gate. Spring passed and autumn came. Time flew by like an arrow. Unknowingly, Ning Qi had stayed in the top training field for over 100 years. With his cultivation speed, holding 2 heaven-grade demon essence beads was only enough for him to absorb for 3 to 5 years. In 100 years, he had already consumed several dozen heaven-grade demon essence beads. But Ning Qi still had many heaven-grade demon essence beads in his space bag. Using them for several thousand years wasn't a problem. The demonic energy that Ning Qi absorbed from the demon essence bead was completely used to cultivate the 9 inner hidden gate. After 100 years, the 7th of the 9 inner hidden gates had finally begun to loosen. On Ning Qi's left chest, a faint dot of light appeared, like a star in the universe, flickering in and out. The further one went into the 9 inner hidden gates, the more difficult it was to cultivate. To open the 7th gate was far more difficult than the first 6 combined. Time passed year by year. After another 100 years, the star on Ning Qi's left chest finally erupted with a dazzling light. The 7th gate of the 9 inner hidden gates open. Bang! Terrifying power poured out like a flood, filling Ning Qi's body. At this moment, Ning Qi's strength had increased by a full 128 times. This kind of strength was infinitely close to the Earth Devil stage. But compared to the Earth Demon realm, there was still a great disparity. Only by opening the 8th gate of the 9 inner hidden gates would he be able to contend with an early Earth Demon realm existence. However, there was another method. The 9 inner hidden gates increased Ning Qi's foundation strength. Thus, as long as Ning Qi's foundation strength increased, the power of the 9 inner hidden gates would also rise. If he could break through the shackles of the 9 tribulations and take the 2nd step, then the power of the 7th of the 9 inner hidden gates would be enough to contend with an early Earth demon. From this, it could be seen that to Ning Qi, the 9 inner hidden gates cultivation method was already on equal footing with the imprisoning dragon elephant art. Once the imprisoning dragon elephant art broke through to the 11th layered heavens, his combat strength would increase significantly. At that time, let alone the 2nd layered heavens of the underworld, even the 3rd layered heavens or the 4th layered heavens of the immortal continent would not be able to find a second freakish existence like Ning Qi. It's already a 7th tier demon battle skill. If I were to cultivate it to the pinnacle of the 9th tier, I wonder if I'll be able to open the 10th gate. Ning Qi let out a long breath. He stood up and moved his meridians. Every time he punched out, the vibrating power would be enough to instantly kill a perfect human demon. Ning Qi suddenly felt that it was necessary for him to cultivate a melee demon battle skill. However, he only had around 10,000 Dragon Slayer crystals left. He couldn't exchange for a slightly better battle skill, so he could only postpone this matter. Ning Qi used 24 hours to warm up his body. As his blood boiled, he sat down and grasped 2 heaven-grade demon essence beads in each hand, a total of 4 beads. He wanted to break through to the 8th of the 9 inner hidden gates. As time passed, Ning Qi's mortal body became increasingly strong. Because he hadn't made a breakthrough in his cultivation, the tempering effect of demonic energy on his body was very poor. But, as long as his body was strengthened by even a tiny bit, then with the 128 times increase in strength of the 9 inner hidden gates, it would still be considerable. This was the true power of the 9 inner hidden gates. Even if he couldn't open the 10th gate in the future, as long as he constantly strengthened himself, it would also grow stronger along with his body. The heaven-grade demon essence beads disappeared one at a time. Gradually, there were less than 300 heaven-grade demon essence beads left in Ning Qi's spatial bag. Ning Qi's cultivation time continued for around 800 years. Finally, on the right side of his chest, a dim light began to appear. The 8th of the 9 inner hidden gates had begun to take shape. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, 300 years later, the heaven-grade demon essence beads were completely exhausted. At this time, Ning Qi's mortal body strength had doubled from its foundation. Now, the effect of opening the 7th of the 9 inner hidden gates was equal to opening the 8th gate several hundred years ago. After the heaven-grade demon essence beads were used up, Ning Qi could only allow the demonic energy in his body to constantly circulate and temper his mortal body. But the effect was hundreds of times worse than before. At the same time, he spent another 1,000 years trying to break through to the 8th of the 9 inner hidden gates. If there's a chance, I'll have to make a trip to the immortal prison. Without the support of the heaven-grade demon essence beads, wanting to open the 8th of the 9 inner hidden gates will be extremely difficult, Ning Qi sighed. The heaven-grade demon essence beads had been used up, and he still had 90,000 days left in the top cultivation training field. This was equivalent to 90,000 years. This was more than enough time for him to properly practice the imprisoning dragon elephant art and see if he could break through to the 11th layer of heaven. With these two cultivation methods combined, Ning Qi's combat strength would increase by leaps and bounds. At the very least, it would be impossible for Yang Azura to suppress him without spending a great deal of effort. Bai Hua Fairy, your time is up. You may leave. A guard from the divine underworld prison walked in front of the cell and opened the door, coldly saying. Bai Hua Fairy's face lit up with joy. She had waited for this day for a long time. She could finally leave the divine underworld prison, see the light of day, and return to freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be leaving first. Bai Hua Fairy smiled and waved her hand. Before she left, her gaze suddenly fell on the iron bars that had already been repaired. At the same time, she glanced at the place where Ning Qi disappeared. More than 100 years had passed, but that guy was still nowhere to be seen. From this, it could be seen that he had used some sort of strange thaumaturgy to escape from the divine underworld prison. After Bai Hua Fairy left, many cultivators had a look of anticipation in their eyes. The longest that they had been imprisoned for was only 200 years. In these years, the prisoners of the divine underworld prison came and went, the old ones left, and the new ones came. Every time the new ones came, the old ones would tell them about the strange things that happened in the divine underworld prison, but the new ones didn't believe them at all. How could an existence that could escape from the divine underworld prison be captured and imprisoned in the divine underworld prison? This didn't make sense at all. Chapter 21:17. His battle power explosively increased when the prisoners saw this person. Their expressions became a bit strange. There was even a trace of schadenfreude in their eyes. Lin Feng, one of Yang Azura's personal disciples, had been thrown into Punishment Valley by Yang Azura to face the wall for 100 years due to his negligence. Lin Feng, what are you looking at? Do you think that person hasn't left Underworld God Prison? Ha ha ha, no matter how long you stare, he won't appear. One of the prisoners couldn't help but mock Lin Feng. He had been captured by Lin Feng back then. Now that he saw his enemy, he naturally had to mock him to vent his anger. Lin Feng indifferently glanced at the prisoner. His tightly clenched fists slowly relaxed, and he turned to leave without a word. In the following period of time, many of the prisoners noticed that Lin Feng would return every year. He would stay at the place where that person had disappeared for a full 2 hours. Year after year, it was practically the same. However, after 100 years, there were a few decades where Lin Feng didn't appear. When he reappeared, his cultivation base seemed to have advanced greatly, and he possessed the aura of the early Nether Passage realm. Now, even the prisoner who had mocked Lin Feng didn't dare to make a sound. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. Lin Feng didn't seem to place him in his eyes. From start to finish, he didn't pay any attention to him. Only when Lin Feng left did Underworld God Prison become incomparably lively. Lin Feng actually broke through to the Nether Passage realm. What kind of great opportunity did this guy get recently? To think that my cultivation base is the same as his, but I've waited here for tens of thousands of years without a chance to break through. The heavens are really unfair. In truth, that's normal. Yang Azura has 9 disciples, but the other 8 added together can't even compare to Lin Feng. There's something you definitely don't know. Rumor has it that Lin Feng comes from the Lin family of the higher realms. He's a bastard son of the Lin family. It's not strange that he has such talent. What? The Lin family of the higher realms? Is that true? Who knows if it's true or not? Just treat it as if it's true. What's the point? Unless Lin Feng breaks through to the great circle of the Nether Passage realm, the Lin family of the higher realms won't even look at him. That's true. To the Lin family, even the great circle of the Nether Passage realm is nothing, right? When Lin Feng left, the 3 early Nether Passage experts also walked over to the prison. They silently watched Lin Feng's back. Gentlemen, why do you think he comes here every year? Reflect. That's not possible. I have a guess. What guess? Lin Feng thinks that guy hasn't left the God of Underworld prison. He's still in the God of Underworld prison. He's just using some kind of camouflage technique that even Yang Azura can't detect. One of the early Nether Passage experts said his guess. The other 2 couldn't help being startled. Looking at the prison cell, their gazes were incomparably odd. If their guess was correct, didn't that mean that that person had been hiding inside all these years? The 3 of them immediately felt their hairs stand on end. What kind of technique was this to be able to evade the Yang Azura's detection? Top-level cultivation training ground. Ning Qi's physical body had already turned golden. Whether it was from a distance or up close, he looked like a golden statue. It had been almost 100,000 years since Ning Qi had entered the top-level cultivation training ground. Subtracting the thousands of years he had spent cultivating the 9 inner hidden gates, Ning Qi had spent over 90,000 years on the suppressing dragon elephant art. Finally, without the assistance of the lightning tribulation, he had managed to cultivate it to the peak of the 10th heaven stage. He was just a sliver away from breaking through. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. A crack appeared on the surface of Ning Qi's golden skin. Then, the crack spread out like a spider web. Not long after, the crack covered his entire body. In the next moment, the golden skin shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. In that instant, Ning Qi's aura skyrocketed. Breakthrough. The 11th heaven stage of the suppressing dragon elephant art. The golden skin on the ground was actually spiritual qi keratin formed from the overflowing immortal spiritual qi. Ning Qi had been sitting there for the past 90,000 years without moving, which was why this spiritual qi keratin had formed. If someone suddenly attacked him while he was cultivating, this layer of spiritual qi keratin would be like a protective barrier that could block a few attacks. It wouldn't be easy for him to be harmed to the point of being bedeviled. Ning Qi's eyes slowly opened, and it was as if a bolt of cold lightning flashed through them. Ning Qi's pupils had already turned pale gold. In the past, this would only happen when he was using his Dharma power. However, after Ning Qi restrained the surging power in his body, his pupils gradually returned to black and became incomparably deep. The first of the 9 inner hidden gates open. The second open. The third open. The 7th open. Ning Qi consecutively opened 7 gates. At this moment, his aura was so terrifying that it caused one to tremble. It far surpassed the limits of an existence at the perfection of human demon. His current strength was at least equal to an early earth demon. The 11th layered heavens of the confining dragon and elephant art had caused his base strength to increase by more than 3 times. In addition to the increase of the 9 inner hidden gates, compared to when Yang Azura had first brought him to the 2nd layered heavens, Ning Qi's combat strength had skyrocketed. Ning Qi looked at the remaining time. He still had several dozen years left. He would use this time to temper his current strength once more, reaching the level where he could lift something heavy as if it were light. The top cultivation training field that he had exchanged for this time had also been used up. Ning Qi's figure flickered and he disappeared from the top cultivation training field. Lin Feng is here again, year after year, doesn't he get annoyed? Inside the prison, the prisoners, regardless of whether they were new or late, all looked at the Lin Feng with strange expressions. The newcomers also found out from the elders why the Lin Feng would come here once a year, and they were very curious in their hearts. It had already been so long, and he had long since disappeared. What was he doing here? Lin Feng faintly looked at the place where Ning Qi had disappeared. Just as he was turning to leave, he suddenly heard the sound of someone sucking in a breath of cold air. In the prison, all the prisoners were dumbfounded as they looked in front of them. In this originally empty place, a figure had suddenly appeared. This figure had appeared very abruptly, without any warning at all. 10% of the prisoners had seen Ning Qi more than 300 years ago, so at this moment they were the most shocked. It's him. It's really him. How could he appear again? Could it be that he has never left all these years? Chapter 21:18. Dog Beating Staff Art. The other prisoners were also staring at Ning Qi in disbelief. Only the 3 early Nether Passage experts exchanged a glance. Their mouths curled slightly. Their guess had been correct. Lin Feng's body stiffened slightly, and a trace of killing intent appeared in his eyes. But looking closely, it was possible to see a trace of joy on his face. Lin Feng slowly turned around, expressionlessly looking at Ning Qi. At this moment, his early Nether Passage aura erupted, sweeping toward Ning Qi. After not seeing each other for so many years, do you have to be so passionate as soon as we meet? Ning Qi laughed and dodged to the side. As a result, those fellows standing behind him were instantly turned into mincemeat by Lin Feng. Seeing that his attack had missed and he had killed a few innocent prisoners, Lin Feng stopped and glared at Ning Qi. Today, I will definitely kill you. During his time in Punishment Valley, he had been constantly thinking about killing Ning Qi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to Nether God Prison every time. His intuition told him that it wouldn't be so easy to leave. How could a fellow whose 9 spirit points had been sealed by his master be able to leave so silently? He hadn't even touched the formation. When he was facing the wall in the Punishment Valley, he had been thinking about killing Ning Qi all the time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to the Divine Underworld Prison every time. His intuition told him that it wouldn't be easy to leave the Divine Underworld Prison. How could a guy whose 9 spiritual points were sealed by his great master leave quietly? He didn't even touch the tactical formation. As expected, today was the day he waited for. What is it? Lin Feng should have immediately reported this to the Yang Azura. But he didn't do that. He wanted to use this opportunity to kill Ning Qi. Even if he was punished by the Yang Azura afterwards, he would be willing to do so. What? How did I offend you for you to hate me so much? Oh, I remember now. You must have been punished by your master for not keeping an eye on me back then, right? Haha, I already warned you. Who told you to not listen? As Ning Qi spoke, he easily pulled open the nether iron bars. He stepped out and stood face to face with Lin Feng. When the cultivators in the prison saw this scene, they sucked in a breath of cold air again. The newcomers who had scoffed at the words of the older generation finally saw this scene with their own eyes. The iron bars that were made of 10,000-year-old nether iron that could isolate nether chi and were extremely hard were actually so easily bent in the hands of this person? How much strength was needed to achieve this? Lin Feng was also moved by this scene. Although he was at the early Nether Passage realm, there was no way for him to bend these iron bars with his bare hands. Ning Qi's divine power made Lin Feng a bit apprehensive. However, compared to his hatred for Ning Qi, this apprehension was nothing. With a cold shout, Lin Feng attacked once more. Again? Then I won't stand on ceremony. Ning Qi smiled, and with a casual tug, he tore down one of the iron bars and threw it at Lin Feng. Look at my dog-beating stick technique. Bang! Lin Feng's attack instantly collapsed upon encountering this iron bar that could isolate nether qi. Ning Qi's attack landed on his arm, and the immense force caused his arm to break. He was forced back 7 or 8 steps before he managed to dissipate the force of Ning Qi's attack. Good. This nether iron can isolate nether qi, but you're not using it to refine items, but to imprison people? Ning Qi looked at the rod in his hand with a smile that wasn't a smile. The surrounding cultivators were speechless. If it was said that the nether iron could isolate nether qi, then who would be able to refine it into a weapon? Even formations couldn't be carved into it. Were they really going to use the nether iron to beat people? Perhaps before they could even attack, they would be killed by a nether item from a distance. However, when they looked at Lin Feng, whose arm had been broken, they suddenly felt that Ning Qi's words weren't wrong at all. You! Damn it! Lin Feng's arm shook, and the broken bone immediately connected. Although the Netherworld's cultivators didn't specialize in body tempering, once they reached the Nether Passage realm, the strength of their physical bodies was extremely terrifying. At the very least, it was a level that mortals couldn't even imagine. So this kind of fracture was instantly healed by Lin Feng. After reconnecting his arm, Lin Feng once more attacked Ning Qi. This time, he had learned his lesson and didn't engage in close combat with Ning Qi. An incomparably majestic nether aura swept out from Lin Feng's body and turned into a storm of nether aura. Everyone thought that Lin Feng was going to use the storm of nether aura to kill Ning Qi, but in the center of the storm, a large black bell suddenly appeared. A middle-grade nether devil item. Startled cries rang out. The black bell's aura was several times more terrifying than the storm of nether qi. A nether devil item? Something even higher level than a nether devil item. Ning Qi smiled and directly took out the dragon-slaying saber. He slashed it at the black bell like he was cutting through tofu. The black bell was cut in two, and the storm of nether qi gradually dissipated. The black bell, which had lost its luster, fell to the ground. Lin Feng stared dumbfoundedly at the black bell on the ground, and then at Ning Qi. It was like he couldn't believe that his middle-grade nether devil item had been destroyed just like this. This nether devil item had been bestowed upon him by Yang Azura when he had broken through to the early nether passage realm. Its value was extremely high, and it had a special meaning. The destruction of the black bell pushed Lin Feng to the edge of collapse. With a furious roar, blood qi covered his eyes as he charged at Ning Qi. Dog-beating staff art. Bang. One more strike. Bang. Lin Feng was forced to retreat again and again. Both his arms were broken, but Ning Qi's staff continued to land on him without hesitation. One strike after another. The surrounding cultivators were dumbfounded. A grand early nether passage expert was unable to retaliate at all. No matter what technique Lin Feng used, it was broken by Ning Qi's simple and direct power. This person's strength is too terrifying. Lin Feng's battle prowess is actually on par with ours. Look at that 10,000 ghosts devouring heart he used. Even we would have to expend some effort to break it, but this person actually broke it with a single punch. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such power before. Who exactly is he? Could he be a cultivator from the higher worlds? Oh, that's possible. But would Yang Azura dare to imprison a cultivator from the higher worlds here? The two of you seem to have overlooked something. I feel like this child isn't a cultivator from the netherworld. The early nether passage expert who had guessed Lin Feng's thoughts at the start became grave. His gaze was fixed on Ning Qi. What? He's not a cultivator from the netherworld? That seems to be the case. He doesn't have any nether qi on him. I always thought he cultivated some special technique that caused his nether chi to become like this. The other two early nether passage experts stared at Ning Chi in disbelief. Chapter 21:19 Prison Break. Ning Chi whipped Lin Feng for about 2 hours. Finally, Lin Feng's health bar dropped to the lowest point. With a plop, he fainted. It seems I can easily defeat an early nether passage expert. However, this kid has only just broken through, so he's at most below average in the early nether passage realm. Then should I be above average? Or above average? Ning Chi put away his rod and rubbed his chin. Picking up the unconscious Lin Feng, he walked toward the gates of the Nether God prison. Within the prison, all the cultivators were looking at Ning Chi with bated breath. No one dared to open their mouth. Even an early nether passage expert like Lin Feng had been beaten to such a state. How could they dare to provoke Ning Chi? Open the gates. Ning Chi stood at the gates, his voice the same as Lin Feng's. At this moment, a divine sense swept over Ning Chi and Lin Feng. Not long after, the gates began to slowly sink. This divine sense wasn't from a living being. It came from the two strange beast statues at the gate. Lin Feng had a special medallion, so when it swept over Lin Feng, it assumed that Lin Feng had brought Ning Chi out of the Nether God prison. It couldn't determine Lin Feng's current state. When the gates completely sank, the two guards respectfully smiled. Senior apprentice brother Lin, you're leaving just like this? Don't stay, who are you? The two of them revealed a look of astonishment as they stared at Ning Chi, dumbfounded. Ning Chi smiled and flew out. With lightning speed, he slapped their foreheads. Immediately after, the two middle-stage Nether Realm cultivators were beaten into a bloody mist by Ning Chi. They were instantly killed. Ning Chi smiled and walked out. A strand of immortal spiritual chi surged out of his body and landed on Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng's eyes opened, and his expression was wooden. He walked in front of Ning Chi like a puppet, while Ning Chi walked behind him with his head lowered. Along the way, he encountered many cultivators who bowed to Lin Feng. Lin Feng returned their greetings one by one. Apart from looking a little disheveled, there were no flaws. The function of the supervisory hall was to monitor the situation in the lower realms. For example, if something big or important happened in the lower realms, the supervisory hall would immediately receive news from the underworld emperor and make a series of decisions. At the same time, there was also a spatial passage that led to the lower realms. Many cultivators in the second heaven of the underworld, after offending some very powerful enemies, would do everything possible to sneak into the lower realms in order to escape. That way, with their cultivation, they would generally be able to do very well in the lower realms. In order to prevent such a situation from happening, the surveillance palace was heavily guarded. There were only 2 or 3 cases of people being smuggled into the surveillance palace. Of course, many cultivators knew that there were definitely more cases of people being smuggled into the surveillance palace. With Lin Feng leading the way, Ning Chi smoothly passed through all the checkpoints and finally arrived outside the surveillance palace. This was an incredibly huge city, and Ning Chi did not stay for long. He brought Lin Feng out of the huge city, randomly chose a direction, and sped off. When the patrolling guards of the supervisory hall passed by the gate of the God of Light prison, they suddenly realized that something was wrong. The 2 guards that should have been at the gate of the God of Light prison had disappeared. The gate of the God of Light prison had sunk into the ground and was not closed. The patrolling guards subconsciously knew that something big must have happened in the God of Light prison. You, quickly go notify Elder Yang. Oh, the hall master needs to be notified as well. Everyone else, follow me. The captain of the patrol squad was in existence at the great circle of the Netherworld realm. His cultivation base was enough to intimidate the small fries of the supervisory hall. After all, Nether Passage cultivators and above weren't that common. They could count as top experts. The patrolling guards carefully entered the underworld god prison under the captain's lead. There wasn't a riot like they had imagined, nor were there any sneak attacks. However, there was one cell whose door had been torn open. Seeing this, the captain's expression became grave. After confirming that this cell wasn't the one holding the 3 early Nether Passage experts, he sighed with relief. He led his team over to the cell. The cultivators inside were all sitting neatly. They didn't say anything. They just silently looked at the captain. "What happened here? Who broke the cell?" shouted the captain. He was a bit curious. The cell's door had been destroyed, and the outside door was wide open. Why hadn't any cultivators fled? Could it be that these cultivators felt that the underworld god prison was better than the outside world? After a moment of curiosity, the captain suddenly recalled that these iron bars were made of 10,000-year-old nether iron. Who had such terrifying power to directly bend it like this? Thinking up to here, a trace of anger appeared in the captain's eyes when he saw that the cultivators in the cells were silent. He grabbed at the air, and a late-stage Nether Realm cultivator was pulled over. The captain grabbed the cultivator's neck tightly and said coldly, "What happened here? Tell me everything." That cultivator immediately felt a bit depressed. Of all people, why did they have to capture him? With Ning Chi's cultivation base and his unpredictable methods, he wasn't even sure whether or not he was still here. If he told the truth, wouldn't he end up the same as Lin Feng? Not talking. A cold light flashed in the captain's eyes. Just as he was about to kill this person, an indifferent voice rang out from the cell behind him. "Can't you just ask the 3 of us what happened here?" The captain sneered inside. He put down the cultivator in his hand and icily looked at the 3 early Nether Passage cultivators. The 3 of them smiled at each other and then began to explain what had happened. However, they held back a bit. They didn't tell this person that Ning Chi had crushed Lin Feng. Instead, they made it sound like the battle had been very difficult. The cultivators in the nearby cells all revealed strange expressions when they heard this. There was a faint smile in their eyes. These 3 early Nether Passage seniors were clearly trying to trick the surveillance hall's cultivators. This was a rare chance for them to get revenge, so they naturally wouldn't expose them. Instead, they were delighting in their misfortune. If the other side couldn't accurately judge Ning Chi's cultivation base and sent people to chase after him, they would probably lose quite a few people. Just at this moment, a figure flew over. Elder Yi Yang. Upon seeing this, the team leader hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Chapter 21-20. Piercing the 9 Heavens, Elder Yang, it's like this. The captain quietly explained what the 3 early Nether Passage experts had told him. Yang Azura's expression grew more and more ashen. In the end, he snorted and soared into the air, chasing after Lin Feng's aura. Lin Feng has already advanced to the early Nether Passage realm, and he has the malicious ghost bell, but he's still not a match for this brat? Has he been hiding in the Netherworld God prison all these years? In just 300 years, how did his cultivation base grow to such a level? Yang Azura was puzzled as he chased. At this moment, he was filled with countless questions. At the same time, he was infuriated. This brat had not only tricked Lin Feng, but he had also tricked him. Now, even Lin Feng had been captured. If news of this spread, where would he put his face? What would the other elders think of him? How would the Hall Master punish him? This was the first time someone had brazenly broken out of the Netherworld God prison. Furthermore, this matter had arisen because of him, so he couldn't absolve himself from the blame. Lin Feng only felt that his head was very dizzy and his body was very painful. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and opened his eyes. He saw Ning Chi sitting opposite him and looking at him with a smile. Lin Feng's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. He looked around and found lush forests all around, but he didn't know where he was. Where is this? Lin Feng stared at Ning Qi and said, I don't know either. Why don't you tell me? Ning Qi smiled. Lin Feng wanted to stand up, but as soon as he twisted his body, he felt an incomparably intense pain all over his body, causing a layer of cold sweat to appear on his forehead. Your injuries are very heavy. Don't move, or don't blame me if you become a cripple in the future. Ning Qi smiled. It's not like you're going to kill me. Why did you capture me? Lin Feng let out a pained groan. He clenched his teeth as he looked at Ning Qi. At the same time, he was a bit unwilling. He couldn't understand why he wasn't a match for this brat despite having advanced to the early Nether Passage realm. Because you're temporarily useful to me, I won't kill you. Once you're useless, it won't be too late to kill you. Ning Qi calmly said. Useful? Lin Feng was slightly taken aback. Then, a serious look appeared on his face. He knew why the other party did not kill him. It was obvious that the other party was afraid that his master would come looking for him, so he was using him as a hostage. Lin Feng knew the Yang Azura's personality. His master wouldn't show mercy just because he was in the enemy's hands. When it was time to give up, his master wouldn't hesitate to give up on him. However, Lin Feng wouldn't tell Ning Qi about this. If he did, it would be the same as cutting off his own path to survival. I have to think of a way to escape from this kid's control. It won't be too late to kill him when I meet up with Master, Lin Feng thought to himself. Next, he became silent as he silently healed his wounds. After a few days, Lin Feng discovered that Ning Qi seemed to be wandering aimlessly. He didn't have a specific destination. After observing him for a few days, Lin Feng knew where he was. Netherworld River Mountain Range. This was a mountain range that was extremely far away from the supervisory hall. As for how Ning Qi had managed to bring him here in such a short period of time, Lin Feng had no idea. Since he couldn't figure it out, he might as well not think about it, because he had a way to escape from Ning Qi's control. If he was lucky, he might even be able to kill this guy. After a few more days, Ning Qi suddenly discovered that the number of underworld cultivators in the surroundings had increased. Seeing this, Ning Qi pulled Lin Feng and flew to a higher place to look. Not far away, in the middle of the mountain range, there was an incomparably huge river. This river was unfathomably wide and long. A white mist covered its surface, making it look like a paradise in the human world. To be able to see such a place in the underworld was truly shocking. On both sides of this river, countless underworld cultivators had gathered. It was like one market after another. There were so many markets that one couldn't even see the end of them. Little Lin, for so many underworld cultivators to gather here, it must not be a simple place, right? What's the name of this river? Ning Qi smiled. Lin Feng's face was cold as he said, This is the River Styx. River Styx? Ning Qi's eyes flickered. These two words seemed to have triggered a memory in his mind. River Styx? What's in the river? Ning Qi asked without batting an eyelid. Lin Feng glanced at Ning Qi and said calmly, This River Styx hides many things. Many things. That's right. You can find anything in it. It wouldn't be surprising even if you caught a netherworld dragon. You're not a underworld cultivator. Even if I told you these things, you probably wouldn't understand, right? Lin Feng said with a faint smile. Ning Qi smiled faintly and said, I don't understand, but can't you understand? Hurry up and tell me. I still have some patience now. When I lose my patience, I'll kill you with one slap and find a random underworld cultivator. Do you think they won't tell me? Lin Feng's expression was a little ugly. However, he was still afraid of being killed by Ning Qi. He said coldly, You came from the first heaven. Have you not seen the river Styx in the first heaven? Is there a relationship between them? Ning Qi hadn't been to the river Styx when he was in the first heaven. However, Lin Feng's words clearly had an ulterior motive. They are the same river Styx. Lin Feng smiled faintly and revealed a proud expression. This river Styx is the source of the underworld and the origin of all things in the underworld. It runs through the lower 3 heavens, the middle 3 heavens, and the upper 3 heavens. In the 9 heavens of the underworld, you can see this river Styx. However, although they are the same river Styx, they can't be considered the same river Styx. Rumor has it that the heavenly Tao split it into 9 parts. However, it wasn't simply cut off because someone once saw a netherworld dragon from the 9 heavens swimming here. That's why I said that you can find all things in this river Styx as long as you're lucky. A river that runs through the 9 heavens. Ningqi looked at the misty Styx river with some surprise. There was actually someone who had such a method to make a river ignore the boundaries of space and be born in 9 different places. Lin Feng was most likely not lying. Only the heavenly Tao of this place had such a magical power. Could this river Styx be the one that little Six mentioned? If it really is, isn't this the home of the little octopus? Ningqi's eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. Back when he was suppressing the little octopus in the Azure Dragon Continent's Tong Tian Tower, little Six said that the little octopus might be the god of the river Styx. It was a terrifying existence that could even swallow an ancient immortal emperor. As for whether the river Styx in front of him was the one that little Six mentioned, Ningqi was temporarily unable to confirm. Do you know what those cultivators were looking for in the river Styx? Chapter 21-21. What are you looking for? Ningqi smiled. Ningqi smiled and looked at Lin Feng. Reincarnation fruit. Lin Feng smiled. Rumor is that eating this reincarnation fruit can allow you to reincarnate with your memories. The value of a single reincarnation fruit is comparable to a top-grade Nether Passage Devil item. Even Great Circle Nether Passage experts are looking for it. Reincarnation fruit? Ningqi looked at Lin Feng with a smile that wasn't a smile. If there really is such a divine item, it's probably one in 10,000 years, right? When you're lucky, you'll be able to see it. There were once a few netherworld cultivators who found a reincarnation fruit and reincarnated. Can you guess where they went? Lin Feng smiled. Not waiting for Ningqi to reply, Lin Feng continued, the 9th heavens. They reincarnated to the 9th heavens. In this life, they have become almighty experts that we can't even hope to reach. Since they've already reincarnated, how do you know where they went? Perhaps in this life they became pigs or dogs. Ningqi smiled. Before they reincarnated, they were forced into a dead end by someone. That person was a Nether Passage expert at the Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm. Although he wasn't this world's Netherworld Emperor, his status wasn't that much lower. Less than 100 years after they reincarnated, they returned to this world and easily took away that person's head. Lin Feng nodded. Ningqi's expression changed slightly. Was there really such a thing as a reincarnation fruit in this world? He went to the dragon-slaying shopping center to search, but he didn't find a reincarnation fruit. As if sensing Ningqi's interest, a hint of joy flashed in the depths of Lin Feng's eyes. Just as he was about to continue enticing Ningqi to stay and search for the reincarnation fruit, a huge change suddenly occurred in the nearby Netherworld River. The mist above the Netherworld River thickened and churned continuously like a sea of clouds. One by one, the Netherworld cultivators broke through the air from the Netherworld River and flew to the shore in a panic. They watched the change in horror. What happened to the Netherworld River? That was close. Fortunately, I ran fast just now. The people who were with me are all dead. How did they die? It was too fast, I couldn't see it clearly. The cultivators on both sides of the mountain range all had serious expressions on their faces. Although the change in the underworld river was sudden, it was not surprising. After all, this was a legendary river that connected the 9 heavens. It was normal for strange phenomena to appear occasionally. Many cultivators had looks of anticipation in their eyes. Strange phenomena in the underworld river might represent the arrival of a great opportunity. Don't tell me that the reincarnation fruit you spoke of has appeared? Ning Qi smiled and looked at Lin Feng, who had a stunned look on his face. When Lin Feng heard this, he hurriedly suppressed the shock in his heart. He frowned slightly. Why did the Netherworld River have a strange phenomenon at this moment? Now that he was being controlled by Ning Qi, even if something good appeared in the Styx River, he would not have the chance to obtain it. Rumble, a loud sound came from the Netherworld River. The mountains on both sides seemed to be shaking. Huge rocks kept falling into the Netherworld River. However, before these rocks could touch the surface of the Netherworld River, they were shattered by some kind of power in the Netherworld River. This is the power. Those few good friends of mine were killed by this power. What is it? Could it be the legendary Netherworld dragon? It might be a Netherworld beast from the upper realm. Everyone guessed in their hearts. However, when they saw what appeared in the Netherworld River, they were instantly shocked. They saw a gigantic building poking its head out of the Netherworld River. No one knew how big this building was. They only knew that this building was already 1,000 feet tall when it was exposed above the Netherworld River. Every pillar on it was carved with indecipherable runes and strange beasts. They had never seen most of the strange beasts before. There were only a few that they could just barely recognize. One of them was the Netherworld dragon that had appeared in this world during the Sirius's Sirius. Could this building have floated here from the 9 heavens? A cultivator cried out involuntarily. The other Netherworld cultivators were overjoyed after their initial shock. Several early Nether Realm existences impatiently flew toward the building. However, as soon as they landed on the building, it was as if their essence blood had been sucked dry, and they fell to the ground like dried corpses. However, they didn't immediately die. Instead, they maliciously looked at the cultivators on the shore and stretched out their hands as if asking for help. After a full 5 breaths, they completely died. Their bodies turned into black smoke and dissipated. The originally restless Netherworld cultivators immediately calmed down when they saw this. No matter what the origin of this palace was, they were certain of 2 things. First, its origin was extraordinary. Second, it was very dangerous. There must be a great treasure inside. So what if there is a great treasure? Can we go in? What a pity. We can only wait for the news to spread and have the leaders of the major powers come to see if they can enter. Perhaps Nether Passage experts can enter? Once they arrive, we won't even be able to drink the soup. Not necessarily. This palace is so strange. It's hard to say. Of the cultivators who made a living by the Netherworld River, the highest cultivation base was only at the peak of the Nether Realm. The lowest cultivation base wasn't even at the early Nether Realm. As for Nether Passage cultivators, there wasn't a single one. So when they saw those early Nether Realm cultivators die, the rest of the cultivators, including the peak Nether Realm cultivators, didn't dare to move. They couldn't risk their lives for something that didn't exist. This is a rare opportunity. If we can enter this palace before the other experts arrive, our harvest will definitely be great. Lin Feng looked at Ning Qi, eager to act. Didn't you see how miserable their deaths were? Are you sure you won't die if you go up? Ning Qi smiled. Me? Lin Feng was startled. He originally thought that with the greedy hearts of cultivators, this fellow in front of him wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. He hadn't expected that he wouldn't be moved at all. That's right. How about this? I'll throw you up and see if you die. Ning Qi smiled and then grabbed Lin Feng's neck. In front of Lin Feng's shocked expression, Ning Qi threw Lin Feng toward the palace. Boom! The cultivators on the 2 sides of the Netherworld River stared blankly at this scene. They saw Lin Feng miserably lying on top of the palace. After a long while, he slowly stood up and looked down at himself. Just as a faint smile appeared on his face, it suddenly turned into terror. He soared into the air, flying toward Ningqi. Everyone saw that one of Lin Feng's legs had withered. It seems even early Nether Passage experts can't stand for long, let alone go in. Ningqi had a smile that wasn't a smile. Chapter 21-22. You have no right to be here. That person's aura seems to be in the Nether Passage realm? Even Nether Passage experts can't stay in this palace for long? I'm afraid it really came from the upper realm. I wonder if there are any living creatures inside? Could it be the abode of a powerful cultivator? The cultivators on both sides of the sticks looked at Lin Feng. After sensing his aura, their eyes were filled with shock. Just at this moment, several figures flew over. There were over 30 of them, and each of them emitted the aura of the Nether Passage realm. Some of them were strong, while others were weak. The weaker ones were on par with Lin Feng, while the stronger ones were even stronger than the Yang Azura. Ningqi's expression immediately became much more serious. The other party had arrived so quickly, so it could not be a coincidence. Could it be that they already knew that such a palace would rise here? The news from above is indeed true. This palace actually appeared in our second heaven of the underworld. It's really incredible. I was just lucky. However, given our strength, we might not be able to obtain anything from this palace. The cultivators of the upper third heaven shouldn't be able to get here in time, right? I heard that this palace has a limited time to appear. Not to mention the upper three heavens, even the cultivators of the middle three heavens wouldn't be able to receive the news in such a short time. We just have to wait here for the emissary of the third heavens. The aura of this palace is extremely terrifying. Only when the emissary arrives will we know if we can enter or not. Emissary? The expressions of the surrounding netherworld cultivators became strange. So these Nether Passage cultivators had long since received news from the higher realms that such a palace might appear in the Netherworld River. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before they would be able to personally see the emissary from the third heaven. Quite a few cultivators were excited. To be able to personally see the emissary in their lifetimes, they couldn't help but be excited. So it's these seniors. Finally, someone recognized the Nether Passage expert. However, he didn't recognize all of them. He only recognized 70 to 80% of them. The Valley Master of the Ghost Howling Valley, the Great Elder of the Heaven Nether Palace, the Palace Master of the Sea God Temple, the Sect Master of the Dark Spirit Sect. TSK, these big shots are all here. The Sect Master of the Dark Spirit Sect? Ningqi looked at Lin Feng with a strange expression and said, "Did the matter that the Dark Spirit Sect Lord discussed with your master have something to do with the Netherworld River?" "I don't know." Lin Feng shook his head. "Lin Feng, why isn't your master here yet?" The head of the Dark Spirit Sect said with a smile as his eyes suddenly fell on Lin Feng and Ningqi. Lin Feng's expression changed. He subconsciously glanced at Ningqi, then reluctantly cupped his hands and said, "Signorine, Master should be here soon." "Yang Azura? It makes no difference whether he comes or not." The Nether Passage experts near the Een Spirit Sect Master sneered. It seemed they had some enmity with the Yang Azura. Their gazes toward Lin Feng and Ningqi were a bit unfriendly. "As expected, you knew that your master would come to the Netherworld River." Ningqi looked at Lin Feng with a faint smile. "I only know that master had an agreement with the leader of the Dark Spirit Sect. As for what the agreement was, do you think I would know?" Lin Feng glanced at Ningqi and explained in a weak tone. He was really afraid that Ningqi would lose his temper on the spot and kill him directly. Based on his understanding of Ningqi's strength, Ningqi could easily kill him before the leader of the Dark Spirit Sect and the others could react, and then escape from this place. This was also one of the reasons why Lin Feng didn't ask the leader of the Dark Spirit Sect for help. The other reason was that he didn't want the leader of the Dark Spirit sect and the others to know that he was being held hostage by Ningqi. That would cause his master to lose face in front of his enemies. Lin Feng, who is this? The leader of the Dark Spirit sect suddenly looked at Ningqi with a faint smile. Ningqi's aura was a bit strange. Ghost Howl Valley Master and the others looked at Ningqi. Dozens of divine senses scanned Ningqi's body. Ningqi smiled and said, "Everyone, I'm not a woman. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm very young. May I know your name?" The leader of the Dark Spirit sect smiled. "I am Ning Beixian." Ningqi smiled indifferently. His body shook, and the divine senses of the Valley Master and the others shattered. Their mouths curled into cold smiles as they stared at Ningqi. However, the aura that Ningqi had released just now made them think that he was a nether passage cultivator. That was why they didn't attack Ningqi just because their divine senses were shattered. Ning Beixian? I've never heard of this name before. He should be someone who has just entered the nether passage realm. The leader of the Dark Spirit sect and the others exchanged a glance. Ning Beixian, this is a dangerous place. With your initial nether passage cultivation base, you don't have the qualifications to stand here. You should leave quickly. The Ghost Howling Valley Lord smiled. When the Great Elder and the others heard this, they chuckled and looked at Ningqi with a hint of mockery in their eyes. If there really were treasures in this palace, then Ningqi and the Dark Spirit sect's Grand Elder would inevitably get a share. Originally, Ningqi had been planning to leave. Whatever was inside the palace had nothing to do with him. Furthermore, the Yang Azura would very likely arrive soon. However, after hearing the Valley Master's words, Ningqi didn't plan on leaving just like this. With his current power, even the Yang Azura wouldn't be able to suppress him. If he brought out all his trump cards, let alone suppress him, it would be hard to say who would win. What does it have to do with you whether I leave or not? Ningqi looked at the Ghost Howl Valley Master and smiled. Everyone was startled. The surrounding netherworld cultivators sucked in a cold gasp of air. Their gazes toward Ningqi changed slightly. This fellow dared to be so rude to the Ghost Howl Valley's master? This was a famous giant of the netherworld. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, he had already reached the mid-nether passage realm. In fact, he was on the same level as some late nether passage cultivators. The Ghost Howl Valley he led was an extremely powerful power in the second heaven stage. Just the early nether passage experts alone numbered over 10. If they all came out, including the Valley Master himself, they would even be able to fight against a late nether passage cultivator. What did you say? The Valley Master didn't seem to hear him clearly. He stared coldly at Ningqi. The Nether Heaven Palace's Grand Elder and the others' expressions became odd. They narrowed their eyes at Ningqi, wanting to see where his confidence came from. Don't act. You heard me clearly, so saying it again will be the same. Ningqi smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura erupted from the Valley Master's body, one that was slightly stronger than the rising sun Azura's. A trace of fear flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. He was now standing together with Ningqi. If the Ghost Howl Valley Master became angry, wouldn't he kill him as well? Chapter 21-23. Slap. It wasn't just the Valley Master who was intimidated by Ningqi's aura. Even the Nether Heaven Palace's Grand Elder, the only late Nether Passage expert present, looked at Ningqi in shock, his hair standing on end. What's going on? Lin Feng looked at Ningqi, dumbfounded. It was like he had been petrified. The Nether Realm existences on both sides of the river Styx, and even the low-level cultivators whose cultivation hadn't reached the Nether Realm, were suppressed to the ground by Ningqi's terrifying aura. They didn't even have the ability to move a finger. What a terrifying aura! Just what realm is this person at? Could it be? The Ghost Howl Valley Master's eyes flashed with fear. Ning Qi stealthily put the Immortal Lord medallion into his spatial bag, and the aura on his body instantly disappeared. The terrifying aura just now came from the Immortal Lord medallion, a supreme-grade Dao treasure. The item used by the Immortal Lord medallion was naturally extraordinary. With Ning Qi's current cultivation, he couldn't refine it, but he could still use its aura to scare people. This could be considered a soft trump card. It couldn't really kill his enemies, but as long as they weren't idiots after sensing this aura, no one would dare to attack Ning Qi again. However, this kind of move could only be used once against the same enemy. If it was used a few more times, it would reveal a flaw. How is this possible? If he was so strong, why would he have been suppressed by Master back then? Lin Feng looked at Ning Qi with a complicated expression. He had a feeling that something was off. However, when he thought of how he, a grand early Nether Passage expert, had been suppressed by Ning Qi without being able to fight back, this matter seemed to be easy to explain. After Ning Qi's aura disappeared, Ghost Howl Valley Master and the others heaved a long sigh of relief. The ordinary cultivators on both sides of the river also climbed up from the ground. When they looked at Ning Qi again, there was a trace of fear and worship in their eyes. Just his aura alone was so terrifying. Just what level of cultivation did he have? The Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm? Or even higher? Just who are you? The Nether Heaven Palace's Grand Elder solemnly cupped his hands toward Ning Qi. The Een Spirit Sect's Grand Elder's expression also became solemn. He looked from Lin Feng to Ning Qi, trying to guess the relationship between the two of them. Lin Feng was only a disciple of Yang Azura. How could he stand together with such an existence? Indeed, in the eyes of the head of the Dark Spirit Sect, Ning Qi's cultivation was at least higher than his. That aura just now couldn't be faked. Even when he was facing a Nether Passage expert at the Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm, he hadn't felt such a feeling. I told you, my name is Ning Beixian. Ning Qi smiled and ignored the elder. He looked at the Ghost Howl Valley Master and said, "Slap yourself." Slap yourself? Everyone's expression became extremely strange. Even the great elder of the Heaven Nether Palace, who was about to continue speaking, shut his mouth and silently looked at the Ghost Howl Valley Master. The Ghost Howl Valley Master opened his mouth, but when he saw Ning Qi's cold expression and the murderous intent in his eyes, he gritted his teeth and slapped himself in the face in front of all the cultivators present. The crisp sound of the slaps echoed in the surroundings. Each slap made the hearts of the Dark Spirit Sect's Grand Elders shake. At the same time, they rejoiced that they hadn't been the first to provoke Ning Qi. The last bit of doubt in their hearts gradually faded. To dare to ask the Ghost Howl Valley Master to slap himself, this was definitely a decision made with absolute confidence in his own cultivation base. This is what it means to be the king of the strong. As long as one's cultivation base reaches a certain level, even a giant of the netherworld like the Ghost Howl Valley Master will have to slap himself. When can I also reach this step? The cultivators on both sides of the Netherworld River looked at the Ghost Howl Valley Master and then at Ning Qi with a trace of worship and envy. 2 hours later, Ning Qi indifferently said, "That's enough." "Yes, Senior." The Ghost Howl Valley Master stopped and cupped his hands together. A trace of shame and anger flashed in the depths of his eyes, but he didn't dare to act up. He didn't want to risk his life to test Ning Qi's true cultivation base. At this moment, another figure broke through the air and appeared in front of the crowd in the blink of an eye. "You're here." Yang Azura's eyes revealed a trace of ecstasy. He didn't expect to find Ning Qi and Lin Feng here. Just as he was about to attack, Lin Feng's lips moved slightly. Yang Azura immediately stopped and looked at Ning Qi suspiciously, then at the Ghost Howl Valley Master. At this moment, the Ghost Howl Valley Master's face was still red and swollen from the slap, but the injury was fading at a speed visible to the naked eye. Yang Azura? He knows that guy? The great elder of the Heaven Nether Palace and the others looked at Yang Azura with a trace of astonishment in their eyes. It's you. It's been a long time. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to come to the second heaven of the Netherworld. I haven't found a chance to thank you for this. Ningqi looked at Yang Azura and said with a faint smile. The great elder of the Heaven Nether Palace and the others were startled when they heard this. There was a lot of information in this sentence. When they thought of the terrifying aura that Ningqi had just released, they seemed to understand something. This was enough to explain why such a terrifying cultivator that they had never heard of had suddenly appeared in the second heaven of the Netherworld. This person was not a cultivator of the second heaven of the Netherworld. Yang Azura's expression suddenly turned gloomy. What did he mean by that? Could it be that he had deliberately been suppressed by him, and used him to come to the second heaven of the Netherworld? Yang Azura looked at Ningqi with a doubtful expression when he thought of what Lin Feng had just told him through telepathy. He was cautious by nature, and the Ghost Howl Valley Master had indeed slapped himself, so he couldn't help but feel a trace of fear towards Ningqi. Haha, you're welcome. Yang Azura nodded with a fake smile. Although he had some doubts about Ningqi, he didn't plan to attack Ningqi until he was 100% sure. So Brother Yang knows this, Senior Beixian. Then we're all on the same side. Everything just now was a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart, Senior Beixian. The great elder of the Heaven Nether Palace tried to smooth things over with a smile. There were a few people who had a grudge against Yang Azura, but they all smiled and greeted Yang Azura. Yang Azura was slightly startled when he saw this. Then, a trace of a smile appeared in his eyes. He had guessed that these people were acting this way because they had most likely misunderstood the relationship between him and Ningqi. Yang Azura naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to say it at this moment. Is it this palace? Have you checked it out? Chapter 21-24. A mandatory task. Everyone looked at each other and then at Ningqi. Clearly, they believed that Ningqi was the only one qualified to speak at this moment. Lin Feng went up to check. Ningqi smiled. Yang Azura's eyes fell on Lin Feng's right leg. Seeing that it was shriveled, a cold light flashed in his eyes. However, he did not act out on the spot and only snorted in his mind. He glanced at Ningqi and said to the crowd, "In that case, we will wait here for the great emissary. With the great emissary's cultivation, he should be able to discern whatever is in this palace." As he spoke, he glanced at Ningqi as if he was implying something. Everyone nodded and remained silent. The Ghost Howl Valley Master lowered his head and occasionally glanced at Ningqi from the corner of his eyes. He wanted to test Ningqi's cultivation level after the emissary arrived. If Ningqi was really that strong, then he would endure this loss. If not, then he would make Ningqi pay him back 100 times, or even 1,000 times over. Ding. Host, please proceed to the Nether River Palace and light up the 9 eternal flames. This is a mandatory task. Failure will result in the deduction of 1,000,000 Dragon Slayer crystals. Success will result in the deduction of 1,000,000 Dragon Slayer crystals. Punishment for failure, obliteration. The system's notification suddenly sounded. Ningqi's eyes flickered. Proceed to the Nether River Palace and light up the 9 eternal flames? Obliteration upon failure? Was this palace the Nether River Palace mentioned by the system? According to the system's nature, using obliteration as a punishment could only mean that the Nether River Palace was not an ordinary place. At least, it was important to the system. Otherwise, the punishment would not be so severe. Is there a time limit? Host, please inquire about the task panel. Ningqi took a closer look at the task panel and found that there were indeed a few words at the end. Time limit, 3 months. If he did not light up the 9 eternal flames within 3 months, the system would obliterate him. Ningqi's eyes turned slightly cold. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, he flew directly to the top of the palace. He believed that the system wanted him to do this task. At the very least, with his current strength, he would not be sucked dry by this palace for no reason. Sure enough, when Ning Qi's feet landed on the palace, a mysterious power flowed into Ning Qi's body from the palace. This power contained a suction force that wanted to suck away Ning Qi's blood essence. However, Ning Qi's blood essence seemed to be twisted into a single strand. The suction force could not be shaken at all. After trying to no avail, the suction force gradually disappeared. What does he want? Yang Azura's expression changed slightly, and he stared at Ning Qi. The first elder and the others also exchanged a glance. They all saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. For the higher-ups to place such importance on this palace meant that it had a powerful origin. If there really was some special restriction on it, then even a nether passage expert would not be able to block it. That was also why the first elder and the others hadn't dared to test it. Now that Ning Qi had disregarded the danger and stepped onto it, was he not afraid of being killed by the restriction? The cultivators on both sides of the Netherworld River also looked nervously at Ning Qi. Just as quite a few cultivators thought that Ning Qi would suffer the same fate as Lin Feng, they saw that Ning Qi was constantly searching. Dozens of breaths had passed, and that mysterious power didn't seem to be hindering Ning Qi at all. Seeing this, Lin Feng felt a burst of lingering fear. He now believed in Ning Qi's power. It truly matched the aura he had displayed just now. He had personally experienced the terror of that mysterious power, and he knew that it was definitely not an ordinary power. He was sure that even his master would be injured if he went up against it. Everyone's eyes followed Ning Qi's movements. About half an hour later, Ning Qi finally found a mechanism on a round log. Ning Qi pressed down lightly, and that area sunk in deeply. Following that, the top of the temple began to undergo a huge change. With a loud rumble, a circular black hole appeared above the temple, and an extremely long flight of stairs appeared in front of everyone's eyes. He found the entrance to this palace? Yang Shura and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. Ning Qi smiled and flew to the entrance to take a look inside. The darkness inside seemed to have a life of its own, with layers upon layers. Even Ning Qi's naked eyes couldn't see more than 10 zhang away. It was pitch black, like the mouth of a giant beast. To enter or not to enter? The others might hesitate, but Ning Qi, who only had 3 months' time, did not hesitate at all. He immediately followed the stairs and entered the cave. When Ning Qi opened the entrance to the palace, it was like a flame had ignited the hearts of the surrounding cultivators. Their eyes were filled with greed, and many cultivators were tempted to make a move. However, they suppressed the restlessness in their hearts and looked at Yang Shura and the others. Should we wait for the emissary? The Dark Spirit Sect Master looked at the crowd and asked in a low voice. The Sea Goddess Hall Master squinted her eyes and looked at the palace entrance not far away. She smiled and said, "Since the entrance is open, there's no reason for us not to go and check it out, right? Maybe we'll be done with this place by the time the emissary arrives. By then, we'll just leave the things that belong to the emissary, right?" Seconded. Agreed. The rest of the cultivators nodded. The Ghost Howling Valley Master looked at the Grand Elder of Tianming Palace. After all, his cultivation was the strongest among them, so he should be the one to make the decision. Then let's go and check it out. Who's first? The Grand Elder of Tianming Palace nodded and glanced at the crowd. That's right, who's first? Since the entrance is open, the restrictive spell should have disappeared. Yang Shura, you go and check it out. One of the cultivators looked at the Yang Azura and smiled with a hint of coldness in his eyes. When the other cultivators who had a grudge with the Yang Azura saw this, they nodded in agreement and asked the Yang Azura to investigate. Yang Shura sneered and looked at these people with disdain. They wanted to work together to suppress him? What a joke! With a wave of his hand, the cultivators standing on the edge of the Nether River immediately felt a powerful suction. More than 10 cultivators who didn't have time to escape were directly pulled in front of Yang Shura. There were early Nether Realm cultivators among them, and there was also a peak Nether Realm cultivator. "Senior Yang, my master is..." Chapter 21-25. Chapter 21-25. Chapter 21-25. Swarming in, they're fine. I knew it. The entrance to the palace is a trap. Once the entrance is opened, the restrictive spell is gone. Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Be it low-level or high-level cultivators, they could not wait any longer. They would not believe that there were no treasures in such a palace. Any random item they could find might be enough for them to use for the rest of their lives. After all, this was the river Styx that ran through the 9 heavens. A palace that could appear in the river Styx must have an extraordinary origin. We're not dead? Ah! The cultivators who were tested by Yang Shura looked at each other and saw the ecstasy in each other's eyes. Then, they did not plan to leave this place. They ran into the entrance and disappeared from everyone's sight. Yang Shura's lips curled into a faint smile as he led Lin Feng away. The Ghost Howl Valley Master and the others did not want to be outdone. In an instant, all the cultivators present dared not act rashly entered the entrance of the palace. When the cultivators on both sides of the Netherworld River saw this, they soared into the sky and flew toward the entrance of the palace. In order to be faster, some cultivators even took out their Netherworld artifacts and launched sneak attacks at the cultivators around them, hoping to stop them. There were more than 1 million cultivators on both sides of the Netherworld River. In the end, before they could even enter the palace, many cultivators died under the sneak attacks of the people behind them. Their corpses fell into the Netherworld River and did not float up again. The commotion here had already alerted people in the distance. One after another, figures broke through the sky. When they saw the scene in front of them, they immediately locked onto the place where those fellows were rushing to go, the entrance of the palace. There's a palace in the river Styx. There must be treasures inside. Let's hurry up and go in. Everyone, be careful. They've all gone crazy. Don't die outside before going in. Don't worry. Very quickly, more than 10 days had passed. During these 10 days, millions of Netherworld cultivators, regardless of their cultivation base, had entered the palace. However, there were cultivators who had been observing from the outside. During this period of time, not a single cultivator had come out from the palace. This caused them to not dare to enter. Was it worth it to throw away their lives for an illusory opportunity? For these cultivators who had carefully cultivated to this day, they chose to be conservative. They did not enter or leave. They wanted to see what would happen in the palace in the end. Did someone obtain a precious treasure and come out? There were still countless casualties. In the distance, 3 figures flew over. However, 10 li behind the 3 figures, a dark mass appeared. When some cultivators noticed this, their faces immediately revealed expressions of surprise. Clearly, a powerful existence had arrived. Where are they? The one in the middle was a middle-aged cultivator who looked very elegant. He wore an azure robe and looked around before locking onto the entrance of the Underworld River God Palace. There was a trace of dissatisfaction in his voice. The 2 people beside him were existences at the Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm. One of them was this world's Ming Emperor, while the other's status couldn't compare to the former. However, his status in this world was still extremely high. He was the sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect. Back when he had fought for the position of Ming Emperor, he hadn't had a good relationship with this world's Ming Emperor. However, in front of this middle-aged man, the 2 of them didn't show any discord. The 2 of them looked at each other and their expressions turned ugly. Emperor Hades whispered, "They might have already entered." Humph, you don't know what you're talking about. Is this how you lead your subordinates? How dare they enter the Nether River Divine Palace before I arrive? Said the middle-aged man coldly. By then, the black swarm of cultivators behind the three of them had also arrived. There were over 10,000 of them, and every one of them exuded a somber killing intent, causing the nearby cultivators to feel a chill run down their spines. Many of them had already recognized Emperor Hades and the sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect, and their hearts were filled with shock. This world's Ming Emperor bowed his head and cupped his hands. This one was incompetent. Please punish me, Senior Xiaolan. The sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect also bowed his head and cupped his hands. However, there was a trace of schadenfreude in the depths of his eyes. Forget it. They might not be able to return alive. Xiaolan sneered and casually waved her hand. Nether energy immediately condensed into a candlestick in the air. This candlestick was very exquisite. There were countless engravings on it that were pleasing to the eye. However, it gave off a very strange feeling, as if it was missing something. Have your people go in and find it for me. There are a total of 9 candlesticks. Bring them all out. If you succeed, let alone me, even the 2 of you will have a chance to enter the middle 3 heavens. Xiaolan chuckled. Middle 3 heavens? The 2 of them were slightly stunned. Then, they looked at each other with wild joy. There was still a trace of disbelief in their hearts. They were currently in the 2nd heavens of the underworld. Even if they broke through the shackles of their cultivation, they could only go to the 3rd heavens of the underworld. In the underworld, that was the lower 3 heavens. Yet, Xiaolan said that as long as they brought out the 9 candlesticks, they would have a chance to go to the 4th heavens of the underworld? No, if it was the middle 3 heavens, it might be the 5th heavens, or even the 6th heavens. Senior Xiaolan, is what you said true? The sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect could not help but ask. You don't believe me? Xiaolan looked at him indifferently. The sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect quickly waved his hand and laughed dryly. Senior Xiaolan is a void underworld expert. Of course, your words are as good as nails. If that's the case, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Xiaolan said indifferently. Did you hear me? Find the 9 candlesticks. The underworld emperor looked at the tens of thousands of underworld cultivators and shouted coldly. Half of these cultivators were subordinates that he had painstakingly trained. When the sect master of the Tyrant Heart sect saw this, he did not want to be outdone. After giving instructions, the 2 of them led their subordinates and flew toward the entrance of the Nether River Divine Palace. The nearby cultivators quickly moved to the side and watched respectfully. The Eternal Flame. If I can obtain the Eternal Flame, I will reach the heavens in a single step. From then on, I will have a meteoric rise. I can even go to the upper 3 heavens. Ha ha, this is an opportunity for me, Xiaolan. Xiaolan looked at the Nether River Divine Palace and could not help but smile. He was indeed a little surprised that the Nether River Divine Palace had appeared in the 2nd heavens of the underworld. However, he was overjoyed. Those in the middle 3 heavens would not receive news so easily. By the time they found out, the Nether River Divine Palace would either have sunk back into the Nether River, or he would have obtained the most important thing in the Nether River Divine Palace. Chapter 21-26. Chapter 21-26. Chapter 21-26. The Undead Minotaur. Just how big is this palace? Ning Qi had been walking for a long time, but the stairs in front of him still seemed endless, as if he would never reach the end in his lifetime. Ning Qi's field of vision was only about 10 feet. Along the way, he had encountered many forks in the road and passed by many halls. Ning Qi had entered every hall and found many interesting things. Some halls seemed to have worshipped gods, but only the pedestal of the gods remained. The pedestal facing upwards was basically gone, as if someone had moved them away. There were all kinds of instruments of torture inside. The nether chi on these instruments of torture was so weak that it was almost undetectable. With a light touch from Ning Chi, they turned into ashes. However, before they turned into ashes, they were stained with mottled blood. The blood had dried up a long time ago, but Ning Chi could sense a trace of aura that made one's heart tremble. Ning Chi guessed that the existence that these instruments of torture had served in the past was probably much stronger than him. Relatively speaking, these instruments of torture did not decay so easily. From this, it could be seen that these instruments of torture had probably experienced a very, very long time. It was so long that these instruments of torture, which were comparable to immortal artifacts, had decayed by themselves. There's a god statue here, which means that some kind of existence was worshipped here. But this place is also called the Styx Palace. If this is the place where the god of the Styx mentioned by Little Six lived, with its strength, why would it need to worship someone? Who are the targets of those instruments of torture? Did they offend the enemy of the Styx Palace? Ning Chi's eyes revealed a trace of contemplation. There was another possibility. Although this place was called the Styx Palace, it might have nothing to do with the god of the Styx River. It was built by someone who worshipped the god of the Styx River, just like those temples on Earth. Got it. The corner of Ning Chi's mouth slightly rose. He would let that little guy out and see what reaction it had. With a thought, a black octopus monster suddenly appeared on Ning Chi's shoulder. It waved its tentacles excitedly and glanced around, thinking that Ning Chi had called it out to eat again. Last time in the desperate situation of death, it had absorbed a lot of energy, and the source that Ning Chi had destroyed was almost restored. It was Ning Chi's demon pet. Ning Chi and it were telepathically connected. After knowing what the little octopus was thinking, Ning Chi smiled and said, "There's nothing for you to eat today. Open your eyes wide and look around. Do you have any impression of this place?" The little octopus was not in a good mood. Its tentacles drooped on Ning Chi's shoulder as it looked around. There seemed to be a hint of contemplation in its eyes. Ning Chi's eyes lit up. "What did you think of?" After a while, the little octopus shook its head and indicated that it wanted to eat. Seeing this, Ning Chi ignored the little octopus, but he did not put the little octopus into the demon pet space. Since this was the Nether River Divine Palace, perhaps the little octopus could help out at some point. Although it did not have any memories of this place, and when it appeared there were no abnormalities, but many things were uncertain. Clang clang, clang clang. Suddenly, a strange sound came from behind him. It was as if someone was dragging a chain on the ground. Ning Chi turned around with a serious expression. He saw that less than 15 meters behind him, there was an existence that was about 15 meters tall. Its entire body was covered with muscles, and its body was wrapped in chains. 2 of the chains fell to the ground, and with every step it took, there would be a clang. Its head was the head of a bull, and the 2 curved horns on its head shone with a faint, cold light. Ning Chi's eyes narrowed slightly. With his strength, this thing was able to get within 15 meters of him without a sound. It was either extremely powerful or it had a special movement technique. Roar! The bull monster let out a strange roar, and the chains on its body flashed with a red mark. Then 2 chains shot into the sky and swept toward Ning Chi. Just as the chains were about to land on Ning Chi, he reached out and grabbed them. As a result, he was dragged by the huge force of the chains and was forcefully pulled in the direction of the bull monster. What strength! Ning Chi was startled. In his current state, he had opened all 7 gates. In terms of pure power, even a Nether Passage expert at the Great Circle of the Nether Passage realm wouldn't be able to defeat him. However, this Minotaur's power was even greater than his. Could it be because of these chains? Ning Chi's eyes fell on the chains, and the Minotaur expressionlessly watched as Ning Chi was slowly pulled toward him. The muscles on his arms seemed to swell, and he raised his hands high as if he was ready to tear Ning-Chi in half. A cold light flashed in Ning-Chi's eyes. Just as he was about to be pulled in front of the Minotaur, Ning-Chi took out his Dragon Slayer saber. With a clang, the two iron chains broke. As soon as the broken chains fell to the ground, they disappeared. Looking closely, one could see that the iron chains on the Minotaur's body had returned to their original state, as if Ning-Chi had never broken them. He. The bull monster seemed to be infuriated by Ning-Chi's actions. With a loud roar, it charged at Ning-Chi. Ning-Chi didn't hesitate to slash down with his saber, and the bull monster was cut in two. It transformed into a wisp of black smoke and then reappeared 15 meters away from Ning-Chi without the slightest injury. Undying body? No, it should be because of this place. Ning-Chi's expression changed slightly. The underworld River Divine Palace might be similar to the Good Fortune Domain, and the bull monster might be a monster created by it. The bull monster roared and once more charged at Ning-Chi. The result was the same as before. It was cut in two by Ning-Chi's saber and transformed into black smoke. But in the next instant, it reappeared 15 meters away from Ning-Chi and continued charging at him. Good. Let me see how many of my saber attacks you can block. Ning-Chi's mouth rose slightly. 1 saber. 2 sabers. 3 sabers. Ning-Chi did this repeatedly. Every time the Minotaur charged at him, Ning-Chi would slash it. After slashing about 100 times, the Minotaur completely disappeared into black smoke and did not appear again. When the little octopus that had been hiding behind Ning-Chi's neck saw this, it hurriedly used its tentacles to pat Ning-Chi's shoulder as if it was praising him. You still can't remember anything? Ning-Chi's brow slightly furrowed. The little octopus innocently looked at Ning-Chi and shook its head. It really didn't have any special memories of this place. At the same time, it sent a divine sense to Ning-Chi. This baby is tired. Send me back to rest. I don't think you're tired, but afraid. Aren't you tired of staying in the demon pet space for so long? Follow me this time. When you remember something, I'll send you back. But if we meet something next time, it'll be your turn. Chapter 21-27. Chapter 21-27. Divine General. Me? Boss, I'm so small. The little octopus was startled and then a look of fear appeared in its eyes. It really thought that Ning-Chi would have it deal with the Minotaur from before. Anyone with eyes could see that this person could kill it with a single punch. Ning-Chi smiled. Just as he was about to say something, there was a miserable howl from behind him. At the same time, there was the sound of a body breaking through the air. Senior, save me! A netherworld cultivator ran over in a panic. When he saw Ning-Chi, he quickly revealed a pleading expression. His face was filled with fear as if there was a monster chasing after him. Clang! There was another sound of chains being dragged on the ground. The cultivator looked behind him in fear and saw that 50 feet away, a terrifying monster had appeared. It was the Minotaur that Ning-Chi had killed over 100 times before disappearing without a trace. Seeing this Minotaur, the cultivator's legs trembled in fear. The dozen or so cultivators that had come with him had all died. If it wasn't for the fact that he had the deepest cultivation and was at the peak of the nether realm, he might not have been able to escape to Ning-Chi's side. The Minotaur coldly stared at the cultivator. Just as the cultivator was about to suffocate from fear, the Minotaur suddenly turned and left, disappearing in the blink of an eye. How could this be? Wuyang Chifeng stared at this scene, dumbfounded. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes. The scene of the Minotaur displaying its invincible might was still fresh in his mind. Over a dozen nether realm existences had been turned to dust by a single whip of its chain, and now the other person hadn't killed him? Suddenly, Wuyang Chifeng turned to look at Ning-Chi. He finally understood why the other person had left. The Minotaur was clearly afraid of this senior. Thank you, Senior, for saving my life. Wuyang Chifeng knelt on the ground and respectfully kowtowed 9 times. I didn't move at all. How can you say that I saved you? Ningqi said with a faint smile. That nether beast must have been afraid of Senior, so it didn't dare to come forward. It was Senior who saved me. Wuyang Chifeng said. He get up. Ningqi smiled faintly, turned around and continued walking. Wuyang Chifeng saw this and a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. Seeing that Ningqi was about to disappear into the darkness, he hurriedly followed. This was a good chance. If he could stand together with Ningqi in this mysterious palace, his chances of survival would be much higher. Who knew if that monster would appear again? We've been walking for days, Ningqi suddenly said. Wuyang Chifeng had been following behind Ningqi without speaking for the past few days. When he heard Ningqi's voice, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he hurriedly answered respectfully, Senior, we have been in here for 5 days. 5 days. We've been walking for 5 days and we still haven't reached the end. How big is this Styx River Divine Palace? Ningqi muttered to himself. Netherworld River Divine Palace? Wuyang Chifeng was slightly startled, his eyes filled with shock. Senior actually knows the origins of this place? After the shock, there was wild joy. Wuyang Chifeng looked at Ningqi with an even more respectful gaze. In these 5 days, the Minotaurs had appeared 7 or 8 times, but they would only look at them for a while before disappearing, not daring to attack. This filled Wuyang Chifeng with endless admiration. At the same time, there seemed to be miserable cries coming from behind them. This meant that more and more cultivators were entering the palace, and it also meant a very important matter. There wasn't just one Minotaur. This place is, when Ningqi suddenly stopped, Wuyang Chifeng couldn't help looking at a large hall next to the stairs. It was like his body was petrified. In this large hall there was a stone statue. This stone statue was 80 to 90% similar to the Minotaurs that had appeared before. The only difference was that the stone statue's aura was much stronger than the Minotaurs. Just by standing at the door, it made people feel fear. You are a netherworld cultivator, do you know the origins of this stone statue? Ningqi and Wuyang Chifeng walked under the stone statue and calmly asked. Wuyang Chifeng couldn't help but look up and down at the stone statue and then at the surrounding decorations. Although he wanted to show some value in front of Ningqi, he didn't have any impression. He could only shake his head and say, Senior, I have never seen this kind of nether beast before. It might be a nether beast from the higher realms. Ningqi nodded indifferently. Wuyang Chifeng was right. If this Styx River Divine Palace really came from the upper third heaven, then it wasn't surprising that the underworld cultivators hadn't seen it before. At this time, a voice sounded behind the two of them. This stone statue might be the legendary soul-reaping divine general. It's said that he's an almighty cultivator in the 9th heaven. If other almighty cultivators die in the outside world, he'll take their souls. Heaven Nether Palace's Great Elder? Wuyang Chifeng looked at the person in shock. Ningqi didn't turn around and had a thoughtful expression. Soul-reaping divine general? Minotaurs? A bolt of lightning flashed through Ningqi's eyes. He suddenly felt that he might know the origin of this stone statue. There were a few other cultivators behind the Heaven Nether Palace's Great Elder, but Yang Azura wasn't among them. Ghost Howl Valley's Valley Master wasn't there either. These people all had some injuries, most likely from the battle with the Minotaurs. Senior, we were in a hurry and I didn't have time to introduce myself. I am Lu Zhong and Gui Hai, the Heaven Nether Palace's Great Elder. The Heaven Nether Palace's Great Elder cupped his hands at Ningqi. Ningqi turned around and nodded before walking out of the hall. Wuyang Chifeng hurriedly followed, but Lu Zhong and Gui Hai hesitated. Lu Zhong, this stone statue is extraordinary. Why don't we take it away together? The Sea Goddess Hall Master said in a low voice. The Dark Spirit Sect Master nodded slightly. Lu Zhong and Guihai glanced at the stone statue. If it really is the soul-reaping divine general, then even if it is a stone statue, we cannot insult it. With that, he walked out of the hall and chased after Ning Qi. When the Sea Goddess Hall Master and the Dark Spirit Sect Master saw this, they looked at each other and felt that Lu Zhong and Guihai's words made sense. In the end, they suppressed the greed in their hearts and didn't attack the stone statue. However, just as the two of them chased after Ning Qi, a cultivator didn't believe it and directly slashed at the base of the stone statue, preparing to take it away. This was because he had passed through some of the halls where stone statues had been moved. If others could do it, why couldn't he? Before the saber landed on the stone statue, 4 minotaurs suddenly appeared around the cultivator. 8 flashing red lights landed on the cultivator's body. The cultivator only had time to let out a miserable howl before he turned into ashes with a look of despair and unwillingness. Chapter 21-28. Chapter 21-28 What's going on? The Sea Goddess Hall Master and the Dark Spirit Sect Master sensed the commotion behind them and quickly turned around. They saw a few cultivators running in their direction in fear. Then, the two of them saw the 4 minotaurs behind them. How could this be? The two of them revealed a trace of fear in their eyes as they quickly chased after Ning Qi. Soon, when they caught up to Ning Qi's group, the minotaurs caught up to them as well. Die for humiliation! Die for humiliation! The 4 minotaurs let out indistinct roars. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they glared at Ning Qi's group. Why are there 4 of them? What exactly did you do in that hall? Lu Zongguihai's face turned extremely livid as his expression gradually turned solemn. If it was just one, they could barely deal with it if they worked together. However, with 4, they would either all die here or only 1 or 2 of them would survive. The Valley Master of the Evil Wind Valley just attacked the stone statue without permission. In the end, these 4 nether beasts suddenly appeared and killed the Valley Master, a cultivator said in a low voice. A cultivator said in a low voice. His eyes flashed with a hint of fear because he was actually just like the Valley Lord of the Wind Valley, ready to attack the stone statue. It was just that the Valley Lord of the Wind Valley was a little faster and died in the end. Idiot! Lu Zongguihai could not help but curse. Even with his temper, he could not help but curse. This meant that he was furious to a certain extent. He had already instructed them not to attack the stone statue because they were afraid of angering some existence in the hall. In the end, there were still people who were blinded by greed and did something so stupid. What do we do now? The Dark Spirit Sect Master had a trace of fear in his eyes as he subconsciously looked at Ning Qi. Seeing this, everyone looked at Ning Qi as well. With the strength that Ning Qi had displayed in the outside world, they believed that Ning Qi was enough to deal with the 4 minotaurs. Wuyang Chiefeng cursed in his heart. This group of people had encountered something like this as soon as they arrived. It was really tiring. Fortunately, he had seen how the minotaurs treated Ning Qi, so he was not very afraid. He was clearly calmer than Lu Zongguihai. Ning Qi slowly took a few steps forward and looked at the 4 minotaurs indifferently. Humiliation. Die. The 4 minotaurs' gazes landed on Ning Qi as they growled softly. Ning Qi looked at them indifferently for more than a minute. Just as Lu Zhong, Guihai, and company were feeling extremely nervous and prepared to attack at any moment, the 4 minotaurs suddenly turned and left, vanishing into the darkness. This, Lu Zhong, Guihai, and company were taken aback. Following that, they looked at Ning Qi with shock in their eyes. Just his gaze was enough to scare off 4 extremely powerful and unkillable minotaurs. Just how powerful was his cultivation to be able to do that? At this moment, they finally believed that Ning Qi's cultivation was much stronger than theirs, and the doubts and suspicions in their hearts disappeared. Senior Beixian, it's all thanks to you. If not, Lu Zongweihai cupped his hands at Ning Qi and thanked him. There was a look of resentment in his eyes. If he were to really fight the four monsters, he only had a 50% chance of surviving. This is a dangerous place. I advise you to leave. Ning Qi smiled, turned around, and left. Lu Zongweihai and company were taken aback. Those words were so familiar. Previously, it was the Valley Master of Ghost Howl Valley who said it to Ning Qi in the outside world. They did not expect Ning Qi to return the words to them. However, what the Valley Master said had no basis, but what Ning Qi said did. These mysterious minotaurs appeared and disappeared suddenly. They were powerful and unkillable. It was indeed a dangerous place. However, this level of danger was not enough to scare them off. Danger and rewards were basically proportional. The more dangerous the place was, the more interested they were in exploring it. If they could obtain some treasures and nether demon artifacts from the upper realm, it would not be a wasted trip. Let's follow him, Lu Zongweihai said in a low voice. With that, he chased after Ning Qi. Seeing that, the others did not dare to stay any longer. They all chased after him. In their opinion, as long as they followed Ning Qi, the danger would be minimized. Not long after the crowd left, 3 figures walked over. Yang Azura, is that person really that powerful? He could scare off those nether beasts with just his gaze? There was a hint of dissatisfaction in the Valley Master's eyes. Maybe he has some special means. As for his strength, Yang Azura stared coldly in the direction where Ning Qi disappeared. His heart was also a little shaken. Did Ning Qi really hide his cultivation when he was in the first heaven of the underworld? Master, I think this place is too dangerous. It's been so many days, but not only did we not find any treasures, we almost died in the hands of those nether beasts. If we go on, Lin Feng said in a low voice. If you're afraid, go back first. Yang Azura sneered and strode forward. The Valley Master patted Lin Feng's shoulder and said, as cultivators, if we can't find our own opportunities in danger, then we'll stop here. Lin Feng's expression turned a little ugly. He understood the logic, but this temple appeared from the Nether River, and it was very likely to be a building in the upper third heaven. How terrifying was the danger in such a place! It could easily take their lives. Master seems to be a little greedy this time. Lin Feng muttered to himself. There was a hint of hesitation on his face, but he chose to follow in the end. After walking for a few more days, a building finally appeared in front of the staircase. Everyone's face lit up. During this period of time, all the buildings were on the sides of the staircase. This was the first time a building appeared in front of the staircase. Didn't this mean that they had reached the end of the staircase? Could it be that the center of the palace was in front? Jade Pool. When everyone walked to the front of the building, they could clearly see 2 large words carved on it, as if they were chiseled by knives and axes. Jade Pool. Ning Qi's eyes moved slightly. This name coincided with the place in his memory. However, this was the Nether River Divine Palace, so it should not be the same place. Lu Zongweihai's eyes flashed with a hint of imperceptible joy. After seeing the 2 words, he immediately tried to enter. However, there was a wave of ripples at the door, blocking Lu Zongweihai outside. There's a formation here. Everyone's expression was a little strange, but they secretly thought to themselves. Basically, a place with a formation would have good things in it. Otherwise, there was no need to use a formation to stop others from entering. How about we work together to break this formation? The Dark Spirit Sect Master suggested. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.